Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has limitless chakra and summon multiple beasts. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by MothBallz, link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. You know, after about 8 years of the constant crap, sometimes it being literal crap, he got thrown at him. He had two options: try and seek the approval of those that would rather see him dead in a ditch, or say fuck it all. Seeing as at this current moment he was being chased by the ever stereotypical mob, there were even pitchforks and torches. He found himself leaning towards the latter option. Who might this person be? Well, our main character, of course. Is there like an angry mob store where they get a group discount or something? Cause this shit is just ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the pariah of Konoha no Sado. Most would be wondering why an 8-year-old kid would be running away from a mob of angry villagers out for blood at such a young age, and the answer is actually quite simple: Kyuubi. By the age of 8, young Naruto was much more mature and jaded than any child or person should be. But when about 89% of your own home village wants to have your carcass mounted on their wall, it kind of becomes your only option. Having lived on the streets after getting kicked out of the orphanage at the age of 4 and doing these fox hunts on a near monthly basis, Naruto knew damn near every nook and cranny of the village. Using said knowledge of his home village, Naruto knew the best place to lose the mob. Even if there were any ninja mixed among the crowd, he doubted they were of enough skill level to be any better than the villagers, otherwise he would have already been caught. Even still, as a precaution, he had picked out a route and a hiding spot that would lose even a seasoned chunin. Noticing that the beginning of his escape route was coming up, he ducked under a thrown rock and made a sharp left into an alleyway. Racing to the far end of the alley, he found the small hole in the chain link fence that would allow his small body to squeeze through to the other side. Not leaving anything up to chance, the young blonde continued running as fast as his little legs could carry him to his next obstacle. Making another quick left and using the momentum he had built up, he threw himself onto his chest and slid through a small window into an abandoned warehouse. Naruto felt the sting on his chest, notifying him that he had scraped himself up pretty badly with that last maneuver he had pulled, but the alternative of letting them catch him was far worse. Quickly looking for the ladder that would lead him to the roof of the building, he spotted it in a dimly lit corner and made a mad dash for it. Climbing it as fast as he could with his lung burning and his body aching all over, he finally pulled himself up onto a catwalk of sorts. Continuing on with his survival-inspired obstacle course, he ran to the end of the rusty and rickety catwalk and, finding the loose window pane, opened it and was welcomed back out into the moonlit world once more. A quick sprint later and he was opening and closing the door of a stairwell leading down to the building across from the warehouse he was just in. Considering this was the slums of Konoha, he highly doubted any of the members of the mob would still be following him at this point, so he jogged down the stairs, still being as quiet as possible just in case. Murphy's Law seemed to dictate his every move after all. Finally reaching the bottom of the staircase and consequently the end of his life or death Olympic sprint, Naruto could do nothing but collapse onto the cold concrete floor. Laying on his back, the only sounds that could be heard were those of the rat scurrying to and fro and Naruto's own ragged breathing. Even with his own Uzumaki enhanced stamina and Kyuubi adding to that, running for your life for the better part of a half hour would leave most anybody tired. I give you a 10 for execution, but your showmanship could use some touch-ups. Considering your age though, I am still rather impressed. Echoed a deep yet smooth and even toned voice from somewhere in the building. As soon as our little blonde protagonist had heard the beginning of the words, he had instantly frozen up. Even now Naruto held his eyes shut and slowed his breathing and hoped with all that he was that Murphy had not fucked him over yet again. As much as I would enjoy a game of opossum with you, I would much rather have a civil conversation. Finally the disembodied voice gained shape, though the shape wasn't exactly welcoming. The owner of the voice seemed to literally melt out of the shadows, shrouded in an all-black cloak that looked like it had seen better days. Regardless of its torn and ragged appearance, it still served the purpose of completely covering the figure from head to toe. The only thing really discernible about the figure was that he was damn near 6 foot, was male, and his body looked to be built to hit both hard and fast. Despite his rather bleak and short life, Naruto liked to think himself an optimist of sorts, but even he knew that there was no escape. While the figure had been talking to him, he brought up his mental map of the area and knew that any and all escape routes would require him to expend energy he just simply did not have at this moment. Even if he could somehow muster some magical force to give him an extra energy boost, he knew that based on what his instincts were telling him about this imposing dark figure standing only feet from him, he would not make it too far. Sighing, the sun-kissed blonde decided that if the stranger had wanted him dead, he would have not been getting up anytime soon, and if the stranger was just biding his time or drawing it out, well, he was already dead, so might as well enjoy it. Naruto attempted to rise into a sitting position, but soon hissed in pain and groped at his chest in a bid to stop the horrible pulsing pain coming from there. Suddenly the pain was replaced by a warm feeling washing over his body. Naruto would have fallen asleep if it were not for the rather loud sound of something metallic clattering at his side. Looks like when you pulled off that little slide maneuver of yours, you weren't exactly paying attention to what was on that floor. Turning his head to look at what had caused the metallic clang, he saw that the figure had pulled out a handful of thin jagged pieces of some kind of metal. Mustering what breath he could, Naruto managed to mutter out a small thank you. No problem, kid. Now how about we get to that little chat of ours? Reaching out his hands, the figure grabbed Naruto around the small of his back and raised him into a sitting position against the wall. The figure unceremoniously plopped himself down onto the floor in a cross-legged sitting position. Ensuing was a very awkward silence. Naruto tried to find out anything else about this mysterious man as subtly as he could with no success. The damn cloak hid everything from sight. Naruto couldn't even make out a face or piece of hair because of the cloak's hood. "So I'm assuming you have some questions you want to ask me, huh?" began the strange man. "Oh well, what did you do to get those metal shards out of me without cutting me open?" questioned the young blonde. "Well, that's a pretty lengthy explanation, so in a nutshell I healed you," provided the figure with an obvious chuckle at the end. Having to resist a very heavy urge to either sweat drop or facepalm, Naruto attempted to move the conversation forward by asking his next question. Well, why did you help me? I'm not ungrateful or anything, but well, most people wouldn't do that for me." "Well, that answer is pretty simple. I'm not most people. More specifically, I'm not some inbred ass-backwards, ass-hat villager that can't tell the difference between a jailer and its ward," spoke the figure in a calm and even tone, which was surprising considering the colorful words he had just used. What now?" spoke the now thoroughly confused Uzumaki. Don't get him wrong, he agreed with the man's views on the villagers, but the whole bit about a prisoner and ward had left him at a loss. "I see, so you don't know. What do you know about the night of October 10th? spoke the now serious figure. Though how Naruto knew that he had no clue because that damnable cloak. "My birthday?" asked the now even more confused blonde. "Yes, your birthday, and also the day of the Kyuubi attack," continued the shadowed figure. "Well, the Kyuubi attacked and the Yondaime Hokage fought it and eventually defeated it, saving the village, but at the cost of his own life," Naruto stated. "Right?" he added, now feeling very suspicious. Shifting his body so that he leaned against the wall across from the young kiddie's side and began, "Well, that is mostly true. You are missing some very vital parts to the story. First off, yes, the Yondaime fought the Kyuubi and died to defeat it, but the reason he died was because he used a kenjutsu that summoned the Shinigami. Now, not even the Shinigami could destroy the Kyuubi, as it is a huge massive construct of chakra, or in other words energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. So instead the Yondaime did, well, something retarded. He chose a baby that had been born that night, and that was as far as the stranger got before he was interrupted by Naruto, and sealed it into the baby, and that baby was me, wasn't it?" Most thought Naruto to be some stupid kid who knew next to nothing. Well, that was true in regards to academics. When it came to practical matters regarding survival and problem solving, the kid was a damn genius. It took him seconds to connect the dots. His birthday, the attack, the looks and stares, the fox hunts, and damn, how had he not figured this out sooner? There was just no way that there could be that many coincidences without there being a reason. But the heavy sigh, the stranger replied, "You got it, kiddo." Giving Naruto a few seconds to deal with this rather significant revelation, the stranger then continued, "So how you feeling there?" "Why?" was the soft reply. Giving another sigh, the figure stood to his full height and leaning against the same wall intoned, "Gonna have to be a little bit more specific than that short stuff. Why did he choose me for it? Was it convenience? Did my parents not care? Who were my parents? No more lies," ended the now sobbing 8-year-old. The stranger couldn't blame the kid. The poor bastard had grown up an orphan, hated by most anyone he had ever encountered, and when he had found someone he thought he could trust and who genuinely cared for him, he finds out the old monkey had only been lying to him. "I didn't really know your parents personally. But I can say this, when your mother found out she was pregnant with you, not a one person could get her to shut up about how she was going to spoil you and treat you like a prince. When your father found out, he ran around the whole village screaming at the top of his lungs that he was going to be a father. Did your parents loved you more than anything in this world and would have done anything to make sure you were okay?" At the end of his speech, the cloak wearer saw Naruto smiling the biggest smile possible and silently crying. "What happened to them?" asked a still smiling and crying blonde. "His parents loved him, so obviously there was a damn good reason they weren't there for him. That's both complicated and simple. To start, your mother was a gorgeous and deadly Redeed Kenwaichi by the name of Kushina Uzumaki." Chapter 2. Hanahagakure no Sato, the strongest hidden village in all of the shinobi world. And after having survived all three of the great ninja wars as well an attack from the strongest of the Bijuu, it had rightfully earned that title. However, at this moment Konoha didn't seem to be the strongest ninja village, but rather a city like any other. Shopkeepers were opening their stores for the day, foreign merchants were setting up tents and stalls, there was a blonde teen racing through the market district, mothers were walking with their children, and the sounds of someone vehemently cursing the evil beings known as paperwork could be heard throughout the village. Yes, just another day in Konoha. I can never just catch a damn break, huh? It's always gotta be something. Spoke the blonde teen known as Naruto. A lot had happened in the years following Naruto's meeting with the strange cloaked man, though from an outside perspective, it seemed as though nothing had ever changed. To most, Naruto was still the blonde idiot who some, though a significantly less amount, still wanted dead. Soon after the meeting with the man, Naruto had almost disappeared from Konoha. For about 2 years the only time anyone saw him was when he would come into town for the occasional visit to Ichiraku Ramen, and after that not even the Anbu could find him. The Sandaime knew this for a fact as he had tried to find out what the blonde was doing and where he was going by having Anbu tail him. But try as they might, they could not find hide nor hair of the Jinchuriki unless he was seated at his stool in the ramen stand. Soon Sarutobi grew worried. The part of him that saw the little blonde Uzumaki as his grandson feared that something or someone had gotten their hands on him, and the Kami no Shinobi side of him feared much the same, but for an entirely different reason. After all, it would not do to have Konoha's Jinchuriki fall into the wrong hands. And after 2 years it seemed as though Naruto had moved back into Konoha from wherever he had been for those 2 years. A vast majority of the people who had hated Naruto had seemingly either forgotten about it or moved on with their lives in those years as well. This meant that by the time Naruto had moved back and he was seen as just another villager. Only about 30% of the village still hated him, and less than half of those people would actually put any effort into showing it with more than just a dirty look or sneer. All in all, village life had continued on smoothly, regardless of Naruto's being there or not, and much the same was happening in the academy as well. Where Naruto had been the dead last of his class before his mysterious vanishing, he was now an average student. He scored decently on tests, both practical and written, and his clothing even reflected this mundane new Naruto. On was the bright orange jumpsuit to be replaced by plain black shinobi pants with various pouches and taped at his ankles, a long-sleeved black shirt whose sleeves here rolled up to his forearms, black shinobi sandals, and black fingerless gloves with the Uzumaki spiral engraved on the metal plate. Though this was still Naruto, and regardless of how he changed, two things forever remained the same: his unhealthy obsession with ramen and his love for the color orange. In homage to his love of said fruit color, he wore 2 leather strips, those things Sasuke wears in the Chunin exam, on each wrist in a burned orange color. The only hiccup seen upon Naruto's return was his placement in the academy. He had not attended classes during his 2-year absence, and his performance before that was not exactly something one would want to present. The head of the academy, who actually saw the potential in the blonde, decided that it was for the best that he be placed in the class 2 years below his, the class of clan heirs. When he had found that out, Naruto had a small chuckle at the irony of a class full of the clan heirs. Seeing as he carried both Uzumaki and by extension Senju blood in him, with him in the class all of the founding clans of Konoha were being represented. Jumping back to the present, the reason for our blonde protagonist letting out a rather colorful string of words was because he had stayed up training to perfect one of the higher tier techniques the strange man had left to him and consequently woke up late. Now he was running at Chunin speeds to reach the academy in time for the exams today. He had no illusions of him not passing. When he had mysteriously vanished, he had spent those 2 years in the deepest, most forgotten forests of no Kuni training to the ground. Thanks to the cloaked man, who he had later learned was named Vincent, and his present of several large scrolls each covering a branch of the shinobi arts and liberal use of kage bunshin. God, that technique was so OP, he had grown by leaps and bounds. He had exited that forest with the strength of a seasoned chunin in all areas of the shinobi arts, excluding Iryujutsu, healing arts, and Jinjutsu, which he was at mid-genin level with both. But hey, can you blame him? He held in his gut a 1,000-year-old massive construct of chakra, whose species were known masters of illusions, and who healed almost any wound save life-threatening ones in seconds to minutes, and even the life-threatening ones could be healed given a day or two of rest. And that was coming from a 10-year-old. When he had started living in the village once more, his training may have slowed in comparison to his time in the forest, what with various factions breathing down his neck and all, but he had still maintained a rather rigorous training regimen. At this point in time he was rather confident that he was at least mid-jounin level with almost all branches of the ninja arts. However, thanks to his Uzumaki blood, he was damn close to being a master at Fuinjutsu. Somewhere near his father's level, but not even close to his mother's near sage level of mastery. Thanks to journals and notes from both his parents, which he had liberated from Sarutobi, and his own blood, his growth in the area was astounding. If anybody knew of Naruto's true skill level, they would call bullshit, both because of his track record and in the shinobi world knowledge may win some battles, but it was experience that won wars. There was no better example of this than their own Hokage, here is in Sarutobi. The man had seen more in his lifetime than even he was comfortable with admitting. Generally speaking, the man was yes a powerful shinobi with his library of jutsu, but it was his experience and know-how that allowed him to use said jutsu to their maximum potential and saw him survive the 3 great ninja wars, had won him innumerable battles, and had earned him the title of Kami no Shinobi. To those naysayers, Naruto would simply scoff. He had not trained that hard and learned as much as he did without knowing that. Both his mother and father had overly stressed the dangers of arrogance in their world. His father had stated in one of his journals that an arrogant shinobi is a dead shinobi, even if they don't know it yet. What people didn't know was that Naruto had indeed gained some battle experience these past 4 years. When he needed money, he would venture out, sometimes in a cloak reminiscent of the man who had saved his life, and bingo book in hand, search out bounties. He started off only going after the smaller D-rank bounties in the first few months, but in the last year he had begun to hunt some plenty powerful C-rank missing nin. That wasn't taking into account the many odd creatures he had begun encountering occasionally when he visited the older parts of Hai no Kuni. They all varied in size and various shades of black or dark green, but it was easy to see how they were all of the same species. The creatures all had tight gaunt skin stretched across their frames, showing their bones in some sections, an elongated skull with sickly yellow eyes, a mouth full of teeth as sharp as any kunai, and they were nearly all covered in spikes that looked like broken bones that could be used as either a blunt weapon or a song blade, depending on the individual creature. He did not know what the hell they were, but they were strong, fought in packs of 5 or 8, and were a pain to kill with their spiked hide. Back to the present once more, we see Naruto jump onto a tree branch next to the academy and leaping through a window land in his customary seat with arms folded and feet kicked up on the desk. "You can never just do anything halfway, can you?" came the giggling voice of one of Naruto's best friends, Yakumo Kurama. He had found the girl crying to herself when he was coming back from one of his many bounty hunts. Naruto could not stand the sight of a crying girl and so had gone to try and comfort her. He may have succeeded if not for the Ido demon that occupied her mind taking advantage of its container's broken state and attempting to use Naruto to escape. The Ido had made a very big mistake trying this. The demon may have been powerful in its own right, but it was nowhere even close to the level of power that Naruto's own demon wielded. Suffice to say, the Kyuubi did not like to share, especially when it came to its Jinchuriki. When the Ido had tried to take over the blonde's mind via Jinjutsu, it found itself face to face with a pissed Kitsune. Kyuubi had then proceeded to absorb a quarter of the illusion demon's Jinjutsu power to give to its container. Since it was not a power of the Bijuus, the seal would not try and stop the chakra from spreading, allowing Naruto more power in the area of illusions. It then gave Naruto a seal much like his own, containing the rest of the demon's filth. Upon return to the living world, Yakumo knew that the preteen in front of her had helped to remove the evil from her and had lunged at him, crying and muttering thank you over and over into his cloak. Naruto merely patted her back and held her. When she had regained composure, he had explained what the seal he now had was and that it would siphon the power the Ido had back into her at a stable rate, allowing her to grow into the power. She had asked him to help her with her training, and he had agreed to do so after suffering at the hands of the infamous puppy dog no Jutsu. A year later he had asked why she thought he could help her when not even a jounin could, and she had simply shrugged and said, "Because something was telling me that you could." After a year of training with Naruto, the two had become near inseparable, and Yakumo was one of 3 people who knew the real Naruto and his story. Confident in her own prowess, she had asked the Hokage to allow her into the academy alongside the blonde and other clan heirs. After a small display of her capabilities, he had readily signed the paper admitting her into the academy. "Well, it is Naruto, so is it really a surprise?" came the other giggling voice to his left, belonging to one Ino Yamanaka. She had seen how well the two had been doing and in the last year of their academy days asked how. They had simply told her that they trained. Not fully believing them, she had demanded that they help her too. Then, after a small debate, they had agreed, and a month into the hell known as Naruto's kick your ass into shape bootcamp, patent pending, she could see the truth of their words. As she grew as a nin to be, she also grew in maturity. She saw what her diet was truly doing to her body, how she had strained relationships with others for some boy and so had set on a path to right her wrongs. Her parents were all too happy to see their little girl trying her hardest, and after a tearful hugging session, they were a happy family once more. She had attempted to mend her friendship with Sakura, but the girl was too far gone as a fangirl and was convinced Ino was just trying to one-up her. Seeing that it was a wasted effort, she had reconnected with her childhood friends Shikamaru and Choji. Soon, though, it was obvious how close Ino had grown to Naruto, and she was often seen with him around the village, along with Yakumo. The two preteens had seen what feelings the other had for the young blonde and started a rivalry of sorts to see who would claim the Kyuubi container first. They still respected the other though and kept it small and trivial, or as small and trivial as they could. The older generation often joked that the two's rivalry closely resembled the rivalry of one hip silver-haired jounin and his youthful counterpart. "Why must the two of you be so mean to me?" spoke the now crying blonde. "Oh, hush up, you big baby," spoke the ever-bossy Yamanaka. You act like we actually hurt you, she started, only to stare in shock and slight rage as she saw the black-clad form of her crush wailing into the arms of her brunette rival, who was currently consoling the blonde by stroking his hair, whispering things about the mean blonde not hurting him while she was around. The hell. She shouted at the two. See, this is why he likes me more, Yakumo said while being as mature as possible. Okay, she was sticking her tongue out at Ino, but that's besides the point, right? He does not. Watch, I'll show you, you damn brunette. Rounding on the blonde, she instantly went from jealous and angry to sweet and innocent whilst pulling a bowl of ramen from somewhere. Oh Naruto, look what I got for our special day today. She damn near sang. The once wailing blonde was now happily munching on the bowl of ambrosia, to him at least, while leaning into the embrace of his fellow blonde. Seeing her plan working, she blew a raspberry at the brunette who was currently pounding her head on the desk, muttering, how could I forget the damn ramen. Alright, shut the hell up you brats and get ready. Came the booming voice of Iruka Yamino, the class's Chunin instructor. Get ready. The Genin exams begin now. Across the village in the Hokage Tower we find the Sandaime along with a group of Jounin instructors peering into his crystal ball watching the very same exams. Blowing on his pipe of whatever the hell he had in there, the Kage spoke, you heard the man. It begins. Let's see how this year's hopefuls do, nah. The first part of the exams will be a written, testing your knowledge of our history and some battlefield situations you may find yourself in. Iruka lectured as he and his assistant Mizuki passed out the test papers. You will have 1 hour to finish this exam and no more. If you are caught cheating you will be penalized 3 points off your test. If you are caught twice you will fail this portion of the exam, continued Mizuki. As soon as all the papers had been passed out, Iruka gave the signal to begin and the students were off. Right off the bat, a handful of the students from civilian families had earned a failed status. Iruka and Mizuki of course noticed far more than just those students cheating, but considering their methods of doing so met the cheating standards of the test, they simply ignored them. The ones that they, or at least Iruka, worried over were Naruto and his little group. Naruto seemed to have fallen asleep, much like a certain Nara not too far from him. Yakumo was merely looking out the window, and Ino was just filing her nails with a kunai. As time whittled down, more of the civilian students received a fail grade. Kiba had gotten caught once using Akamaru, Shikamaru had gotten caught trying to help Choji, and one of the fangirls had gotten caught attempting to help Sasuke, though he didn't much need it. Sakura had filled it out on her own prowess, if you could call it that. She no one knew what the hell he had been doing behind that collar and dark glasses, and Hinata had used her Byakugan to help her out. After the clock had run out, the instructors gathered the tests and Mizuki led the class outside for the other portions of the exam while Iruka did some quick grading. Once outside, all the students proceeded to stretch or give some sign of relief, showing their happiness at finally getting out of the stuffy classroom. Alright, now we'll be moving on to the field exams. First up we got accuracy tests. You will be given 10 kunai and then 10 shuriken. The goal is to aim for the center of the dummy. We will be going in alphabetical order, so Shino, you're up first. With that, Mizuki stood aside with a clipboard ready to write down the marks. Shino, in the style of a true Abiram, merely flung the kunai in groups of 2, showing as little effort as possible. He did the same with the shuriken, earning him a score of 17/20. One by one the students went up with the clan air group, earning no less than 15/20, and Sasuke earning a 19/20, though Yakumo and Ino scored the same, which surprised everybody in the class. It was finally Naruto's turn, and deciding to show off a bit, he grabbed all 10 kunai in between his fingers and casually tossed them. Grabbing the shuriken in a show of speed and dexterity, he fired them off not even a millisecond later. None of the weapons hit the designated target and most of the class was laughing at the blonde's mess up. Yakumo and Ino had to contain themselves from kicking all their asses for being dumbasses. Hinata was shyly thinking some weird Naruto obsessive shit that cannot be mentioned with children around, and the other clan heirs merely stood to the side shaking their heads. Naruto Yufai was as far as the smirking Chunin got before he was interrupted by the voice of his fellow instructor. Actually, Naruto may not have hit the designated target, but he has demonstrated something even better. Each of his weapons has hit either a vital organ, an area that would leave the enemy near death, or a one-hit kill spot. So I think he deserves full marks on this one. Don't you, Mizuki? Spoke the scarred Chunin. Gritting his teeth in anger, the scarred Chunin replied with a strained, "You're right, Iruka. It's good, I'll give him that." Spoke a certain Cyclopean Jounin. "You're correct, my eternal rival. The young Uzumaki's flames of youth burn bright." "Damn it, guy. Shut the hell up. Now is not the time for your fucking flames of youth." Such unyouthful words coming from a lady. Anko, a woman such as yourself should not utter such. For Kami-sama's sake, if you don't shut the hell up, guy, I will personally make you more aerodynamic by removing what makes you a man. Let's get back to those Genin exams, yay. There's no way the idiot scored better than my Sasuke-kun. Guess who? Sakura, I swear if you utter one more word I will show you why spies fear getting a visit from someone like my daddy. And let me tell you this, we Yamanaka give a new meaning to the term mind fucking got it. After the Yamanaka era had said her piece, many students had gained a new fear of crossing Ino. Moving on then. Spoke the slightly fearful pineapple-haired Chunin. In his short stint as an Anbu, he had heard many things about the famed Yamanaka interrogators, and suffice to say even Ibiki feared them and their Kekai Genkai. We will now be moving on to the Taijutsu section of the exams. You will either be paired with me or Mizuki based on a random drawing. You will have to last anywhere between 1 to 2.5 minutes in the ring to pass. No weapons or jutsu of any kind are allowed, though you may use chakra to enhance your body. If you step out of bounds or are soundly defeated by either of us before the time limit, then you will fail this section. Keep in mind you must pass at least 3 of the 4 exams in order to receive a headband from this academy. Line up in any order, and when it is your turn, draw a name from the hat. In groups of 2 the line thinned until only the Uchiha heir and the Uzumaki heir remained. Naruto decided to go first and, sticking his hand in the hat, drew out the first piece of paper he felt. Unfurling the paper, he read aloud with a grin, "I got you, Iruka-sensei. Guess that means you get Mizuki then Sasuke." And to that the emo merely HN''D up Sasuke officially had his own verb. Strolling into the ring, Naruto and Iruka bowed to each other before assuming the academy stance. "Don't go easy on me now, Naruto, you got it," spoke the grinning Chunin. "Well, I don't know, you are getting on in years there, sensei," joked the blonde Genin to be. "Naruto, I am so kicking your ass for that comment now. What's that, old ma? Hajim?" And with that Iruka raced towards Naruto at about Genin level speeds. Deciding to start off simple, Iruka began his assault with a simple punch aimed at the blonde's face. Naruto had of course seen this coming miles away and decided he wanted to reveal some of what he could truly do to his pseudo-brother. A short hop later and Naruto was standing on Iruka's outstretched hand. Striking at near Jounin speeds, Naruto aimed a kick to the side of Iruka's head. Now he may have quit Anbu years ago, but that didn't mean his skills had dulled too much, and with a turn of his wrist and ducking his whole body, Iruka held Naruto by the ankle and, using momentum, attempted to slam the black-clad academy student into the ground. The Jinchuriki may have been surprised at this turn of events, but he quickly recomposed himself and, seeing what was happening, stretched out both arms and pumped a bit of chakra through the limbs, allowing him to stop his body from meeting the ground without injury. Using the chakra built up in his arms, he pushed back against Iruka and, using his free leg donkey, kicked his sensei in the solar plexus, successfully knocking the wind out of the tan Chunin and freeing his other leg. Taking advantage of his sensei's lack of air and surprise, he twisted his body from being on the ground on all fours and in little more than milliseconds was in the air with a kick heading straight for the instructor's ribs. Iruka, not wanting to get hit in the chest twice in a row, brought up his left arm and blocked the kick aimed at his ribs. To his surprise, he actually felt the bones in his left limb rattle from the power of his student's kick. Sending chakra through his left arm to dull the pain and making note to dodge instead of block any further attacks, the scarred man used the same hand he had used to block to grab Naruto's outstretched hand and use it to pull the blonde into his range. With Naruto quickly heading towards him, Iruka twisted around so his back was to his pseudo-little brother and forcefully rammed his right elbow into the surprised academy student's gut, sending spittle all over his shoulder. Trying to not give the blonde room to counter, Iruka kept his head wrapped tightly around Naruto's wrist and, sending his right arm under the armpit of his student, he once more tried to slam the Kyuubi container into the ground. This time Naruto let his legs fall to the ground, first absorbing the shock and once again stopping him from meeting Mother Earth. Letting his body go completely slack on the ground, he used his free hand to grab onto Iruka's arm that was still latched onto his own and, curling into a semi-ball, he pulled himself up and his sensei down to introduce the bottom of his sandals to Iruka's face. The last thought Iruka had before he made out with Naruto's sandals was, "Fuck, this is gonna hurt like a bye." As the last 2 rounds of the Taijutsu test had started, many of the students assumed that the match between Sasuke and Mizuki would be the one to watch. But with Mizuki trying to suck up to the Uchiha heir by going easy on him and leaving all kinds of openings in his attacks, it was over before Naruto and Iruka had even started theirs. But that all the students turned to watch their other sensei fight with Naruto. Based on Naruto's standing in the class, the students had assumed it was going to be nothing special, but boy, were they surprised when Naruto had, in the blink of an eye, stood on Iruka's arm and lashed out with a kick aimed at their sensei's head. As the match continued, the jaws of everyone there continued to drop lower and lower. Even Yakumo and Ino were surprised at the level of power the two were fighting at. They knew Naruto was strong, but he had never showed them how truly skilled he was. Everyone was even more surprised with how evenly matched the two were. The students of course knew that their instructor was strong in his own right, but with as comical and boring as he seemed most of the time, they would have never imagined that Iruka could fight at such a level. In the Hokage Tower, the group of Jounin and even the Hokage himself were shocked at the level of skill being displayed by an academy student and a Chunin instructor. Some among the group knew that Iruka had been in Anbu at one time, but thought that after years of teaching at the academy, that his skills would have dulled considerably, but here he was grappling and fighting at a mid-jounin level. Even more surprising was the fact that one Naruto Uzumaki was the one responsible for pushing Iruka to fight at that level. Now what the academy students didn't realize was that this was even more shocking because this was pure taijutsu being used. Many of the Jounin and even the Hokage himself suspected that had this been an anything goes kind of match, there would have been a great deal of collateral damage, as well as many more surprises. This also confirmed for Sarutobi that Naruto had been hiding a great deal of his true strength, among other things. Normally this wouldn't bother him, but considering this was both someone he considered his grandson and the village's Jinchuriki, he couldn't very well let it slide without knowing the true extent of the young teen's power. It also didn't help that Naruto had stopped referring to him as Jiji, and their bond had become strained when the young blonde had fuck. He knew something had happened when Naruto had vanished. Looks like he would need to have a talk with the blonde Uzumaki soon. As Naruto was helping Iruka walk back to where the rest of the class was, his instinct screamed that something was going to happen soon. Taking note of it, he broadened the area that his senses normally encompass to a slightly larger area. He also made sure to activate his empath sense as well to be even safer. Naruto had always been able to get a feel for what intentions people had for him ever since he could walk, but it wasn't until he met Vincent that he understood why. It seemed that being an empath was somewhat of an Uzumaki trait, and it had appeared in several of the Uzumaki clan's greatest clan heads to some degree. He guessed that he must have inherited it from his mother, and thanks to having the mightiest of the tailed beasts stuck in his gut, the sense had been amplified to even greater heights. He wondered if it would be passed down to any children he had like a Kekai Genkai. For the moment he just put that thought into the ask Kai Ubi later pile. Alright class, on to the last portion of the exam. You will be asked to perform the basic 3 academy jutsu, Kawarimi, Henge, and Bunshin. If you have anything else you feel would showcase another skill you have, this would be the time to do so. Anything you show will be counted as extra credit, announced Iruka. Majority of the civilian students fared decently enough on at least 2 out of the 3 jutsu, and a handful of them even had some other jutsu or skill they had learned elsewhere, earning them their headbands. The clan heirs all did perfect on the basic 3, and all of them had a clan jutsu to show off what their clan was known for. Deciding to return to his average performance again, Naruto performed the 3 jutsu as asked, and as extra credit performed a minor wind jutsu that would put out campfires or cover tracks, which disappointed Iruka, Yakumo, and Ino, as they had wanted to see what else Naruto could do. Wrapping his arms around the shoulders of his 2 best friends and with his patented foxy grin on, Naruto said, "So girls, we've passed our Genin exam and are free the rest of today. What say we go celebrate?" "Sorry Naruto, but daddy and my mom wanted to have a family dinner to celebrate tonight," sighed the slightly saddened Ino. She loved her family dearly, but she was still very tempted to go with her crush. "Yeah, my aunt and uncle wanted to do the same. Sorry Naru-kun, but I promise we'll do something together tomorrow, okay?" Yakumo said, trying to cheer up the blonde. Though his foxy grin was now gone, he still smiled to cover up his sadness in front of the girls. "Yay, of course. Don't even worry about it. You two go home and have fun, alright?" With a hug and a kiss on the cheek from both girls, Naruto found himself alone. He had come to accept his life as an orphan long ago, and thanks to his somewhat sensei Vincent, he had gained closure with the matter. That still didn't make it any less depressing on days like these. As he mused on what it would have been like had the events the night of his birth not happened, he found himself in one of the taller trees surrounding the village walls. As he was gazing at the moon, his senses flared, and his empath sense, he really should come up with a name for it, warned him that there was someone feeling very anxious and devious close by. Turning around and sending chakra into his eyes to allow him to see further, he spotted a man he didn't really like and who didn't really like him carrying something he shouldn't. Deciding to take out some of his more negative feelings on the bastard, he jumped down onto a lower branch and waited. Kami-sama, this guy was slow. Right as Naruto's patience was about to run out, Mizuki burst out of the foliage with a crazed grin on his face. Naruto sweat dropped at the fact that Mizuki hadn't even noticed him yet. God, how the hell did this guy even become a chunin? Shrugging and deciding to take advantage of the situation at hand, Naruto waited for the right moment before he leapt up and axe-kicked Mizuki, sending him plummeting to the forest floor. Naruto waited for a bit before he heard the satisfying sound of the traitor's body hitting the floor and the subsequent scream of pain accompanying it. Chuckling to himself, he calmly leapt down to the forest floor to find Mizuki struggling to get out of the crater he found himself in. Whistling, Naruto began, "I guess I put more power into that than I thought. Oops, haha. What the hell? What the fuck are you doing here, demon?" came the pained voice of Mizuki. "Ouch Mizuki, you wound me," Naruto said with a fake hurt look. "And I was actually just out enjoying the lovely night air when I happen upon you with what looks like the village's scroll of sealing. Now I may have just gotten my hit I ate, but I'm pretty sure that chunins don't have that kind of clearance." Finally getting into a standing position, even though he was shaking and hurting all over, he grunted out, "Fuck you demon brat. I won't even be marked as a missing nin if I kill you here and now." Sweat dropping once more, Naruto began, "Okay, seriously, how stupid are you? First off, the majority of the villagers don't even give a shit about what I do anymore, and look at where you are and what happened all of like a minute ago." Scoffing, Mizuki defended, "That was just because you caught me off guard. There's no way you could actual," was as far as Mizuki got before he was interrupted by Naruto's foot meeting his face. The Chunin-turned traitor was then reminded that Hai no Kuni's trees were some of the thickest and hardest in the whole elemental countries, and it didn't look like he was getting up anytime soon. "Are you fucking serious?" Face-palming, Naruto sighed and gathered the traitor on one shoulder and the scroll of sealing on the other. He had no need for it because most of the jutsu didn't suit his style, and any that did were already in either the scrolls Vincent gave him or in the ones his parents had left to him. It's time for that talk with Sarutobi. Probably what all my senses were warning me about. Sarutobi was a very patient man, and if all you did for most of your day was sit behind a desk and do paperwork, you'd be patient too, or insane, probably both. But his young pseudo-grandson was testing this patience. He knew that Naruto knew that he wanted to see him for very important business, and Hiruzen knew damn well that Naruto was far from slow if that short fight. But Mizuki was anything to go by, so why the blonde teen still wasn't in his office after 10 minutes was trying his patience. Finally, a highly frustrated Hiruzen got up and announced, "Okay, that's it, I am tired of waiting." And waiting for who, you old monkey? Only 4 people had ever had the gall to call him that, and with 2 of them dead and another traveling the countries to maintain a spy network, that left only one person who that voice could belong to. Turning around, he spotted the teen he had been waiting for casually sitting on a chair in the corner of his office munching on a bowl of ramen. He then spotted the body of one unconscious silver-haired traitor, along with the scroll of sealing, haphazardly thrown on the sofa next to said teen. I'm getting way too old for this shit," lamented one very stressed Hokage. "I'll say. I've been here for the past like 3 minutes waiting on you to notice me," chimed the Jinchuriki. "I'm not even going to try and dignify that with a response. Now first off, Anbu." With that, 3 shadows appeared standing as straight as possible in front of the Hokage. "I want 2 of you to escort Mizuki to the T&I department and find out exactly who he was working for, and I want the last one of you to take the scroll of sealing back to its proper place in my library." With a small "hi," the 3 Anbu along with the scroll and Mizuki vanished from the room. Turning his gaze upon the now serious blonde, he began, "Now Naruto, we need to have a talk. First, I would like to congratulate you on completing your first A rank mission. Your mission pay will be deposited into your account before the night is out. However, we have more pressing matters to attend to." Sarutobi noticeably sagged in his chair and assumed a look that showed how old the man actually was. "What happened to you? First you disappear for 2 years, and when you come back you're hiding things from me. You stop calling me Jai." "Let me stop you there, Sarutobi." Naruto cut in with an uncharacteristically serious tone and stern look. "I'm gonna tell you this right now. Where I went and what I did is frankly none of your business. All I will tell you is that I received help from someone, and that same someone revealed to me things that had been kept away from me for far too long." Sarutobi noticeably cringed at that. "I feared that that was the case. I take it you know everything then? Everything from the fox to who my parents were, yes. Something you continuously lied to me about on several occasions. And that is the reason I no longer call you Jiji. You lost all the respect I had for you that day. But Naruto, you have to understand why I did it." "I understand perfectly, Hiruzen. You were protecting the village from Iwa and Kumo coming for blood. And don't say it was for me. Had I been just any other child you wouldn't have cared. It's because I'm the village's weapon on a leash that you did all this. But what you don't understand is that though you may have saved the village and me from Iwa and Kumo, but you damned me to a hell designed by the very same village you had sworn to protect." Naruto, they were just idiots that knew too much because someone thought it was a good idea to blab who the container of the demon was. The same demon who not hours before had nearly decimated the whole village. "But your father wanted for me to be seen as a hero, yes, but that's not what he had in mind. Why do you think nobody knew that my mother was the container? Why no one knew that Mito Uzumaki was the container? They were powerful kunoichi married to equally powerful shinobi, cages no less. And even they feared what would happen if the secret were to get out." At this point, Sarutobi's age as well as the sins he had committed had really begun to show on his face. Even sadder was that at this moment he had stopped being the Hokage and was now just an old man who had made far too many mistakes in his long life. "Please, I'm sorry, Naruto," cried the broken man with tears running down his face. "I had your best intentions in mind. I never meant for any of this to happen. At one time I loved you like a grandfather. You were one of the few people I would have given my life for. I respected you. At one time you were truly the Kami no Shinobi, a respected and feared man. Now all I see is an old man who is too afraid to rock the boat for fear of another war breaking out. Maybe you should listen to yourself for once, sneered Naruto. You're always preaching about Konoha and the will of fire and you're right. There is a reason we came out of all three of the shinobi world wars not just alive but as the strongest of the hidden villages. Why we were able to survive an attack from the strongest of all the Bijuu and come back from it. This village stands as the strongest for a damn good reason. It's because we fought tooth and nail to earn that title. As Naruto finished venting all that he had pent up for years to the old Hokage, he walked to the window and opened it. And you're right, you did have my best intentions at heart, but remember, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Goodbye, Gigi. With that said, Naruto leapt out into the village, leaving the broken man. As Naruto spoke his last word, something inside the man had snapped. I have lived my life regretting far too many things. I'm no better than Tsune trying to drown her sorrows in liquor and gambling. It was because of this sorry state I was in that Orochimaru got away and is now one of our biggest threats. Enough is enough. I am the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. I earned the title of Kami no Shinobi through blood, sweat, and tears. This is my village. They are my ninja. Thought the now revitalized man. Looking at where Naruto last stood, he thought, Naruto, I have made a mess of not just your life, but of so many others, and for that I am sorry. I may never earn the right to be called your Gigi again, but I promise you that I will try my damnedest to become the man you had once respected. With a steely look in his eyes, he began to work. And on that night, a fire not seen in decades began to burn once more. The Kami no Shinobi was back. The day was the day that some Jounin looked forward and others despised, Genin Assignment Day. Even those that weren't going to be Jounin senseis were here to see how the Genin hopefuls had done, as well as who Kakashi would be failing this year. Of course, Ed Scarecrow wasn't even here yet, which wasn't surprising in the least. Finally, the Hokage walked in and immediately all talking stopped, and not out of respect for the Hokage, but more out of shock at the aura they were feeling from the man. Many of the younger Jounin were surprised at the almost oppressive aura the Sandaime was putting out, and others like Asuma and Guy hadn't felt this aura around him since the Third Great Shinobi War when the man was much younger. Asuma merely smirked and thought, looks like dad got his fire back. This is gonna be interesting. Right as the Hokage had opened his mouth to speak, Kakashi shunted it into the middle of the room, book in hand, and lazily drawled out, sorry for being late, Hokage-sama. I was. Enough. Hiruzen shouted, flaring his chakra slightly, showing them why he was Hokage. I have heard enough of your excuses, Kakashi. I've let it slide before because you are one of the more powerful shinobi we have in our forces, but no more. You are a ninja of this village and I am your Hokage. When I tell you to be somewhere at a certain time, you will be there 5 minutes early. Do you understand me, Jounin? Kakashi noticeably straightened his posture and instantly put his book away. Hi. It won't happen again, Hokage-sama. And with a bow, Kakashi walked back to his fellow Jounin. He may be strong and Sarutobi may have aged, but he had no doubt that the Hokage could still bat him around like a pinball if he so chose. Now, like I was about to say, we are here to assign Genin teams. As usual, those Jounin who either volunteered to become senseis or were persuaded to do so, at that he cast a glance at Kakashi, have already voted on who they would like. So those of you who chose to teach these Genin, please step forward. At this, Asuma, Kurenai, Kakashi, Heiei, and Genma stepped up in front of the Hokage's desk. I have reviewed the teams you all wanted, and normally I would agree with your choices, however, in light of certain events I have chosen to make some changes. Many of the Jounin senseis were surprised at this. They thought that they had given justifiable enough reason to get those that they had wanted. Asuma, you had wanted to train the next Ino Shikacho team, but I fear that our enemies will have by now made proper countermeasures to combat said team. Instead, you will be getting Team 10 consisting of Shino Aburam, Chaji Akimichi, and Sasuke Uchiha. At this, some of the Jounin gasped. They had figured that Kakashi would have gotten the Uchiha heir due to the Sharingan. Even Asuma was surprised by this and showed it by asking, Dad, you sure about this? I mean, I can see your logic, but the Uchiha. I'm hardly capable of teaching a Sharingan user. Besides, what would the council say? You're correct. You aren't capable of teaching a Sharingan user. But you won't be teaching a Sharingan user. Young Sasuke has as of yet to even unlock his family's Dijutsu, and he will already have more than enough resources to train said Dijutsu when that time comes. I am giving him to you so that he can learn to fight without the use of his Sharingan. Hiruzen calmly spoke. Secondly, what of the council? I am the Hokage and these are my ninja to command as I see fit, and they have no say in these matters. I see. Sorry for doubting you, Pops. With that said, Asuma rejoined the line of Jounin. Moving forward. Mizuki, you will be getting Team 8, which will be Hinata Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara, and Kiba Inuyasaka. Though the young Hyuga is under a probation of sorts. Thoroughly confused and worried about what the Hokage meant by probation, the red-eyed beauty inquired, Hokage-sama. What do you mean by probation? That's quite simple. The heiress is far too shy for this line of work. If she has not made a significant amount of progress in said area as well as skill, then she is to be removed from the program and recommended to join the Med Corps instead. Shocked and afraid to say more, Kurenai merely nodded and assumed her place in line once more. Now Kakashi. You will be receiving the team of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. As he said this, many Jounin had their jaws hit the floor. The kid was the son of their yondaime. After thinking about how similar the two looked for all of 4 seconds, those same Jounin face palmed. The kid was a damn carbon copy of Minato. How had no one realized it? Kakashi was surprised, but not that Naruto was his sensei's son. He had known that for years and had tried his damnedest to adopt the child, but was thwarted by the council at every turn. The most he could do was sneak the kid presents and protect him from mobs when he could. Kakashi was surprised that Sarutobi was finally releasing that information. He guessed the kid already knew about it, so there was no reason to keep it a secret, especially now that he was a genin. Waiting for the sudden outbursts to end, Hiruzen continued, as well as Ino Yamanaka and Yakumo Kurama. You will be Team 7. Pei 8 and Genma received teams comprising of those with civilian backgrounds that had also passed the genin exams. As team announcements drew to a close, most of the Jounin left to either prepare a rough lesson plan and test for their genin or do Jounin things. However, Kakashi stayed behind after receiving a glance from the Hokage. You wanted to speak to me, Hokage-sama? Inquired the silver-haired Jounin. Leaning into his chair and taking a puff off his pipe, Hiruzen spoke. Yes, I did. Thanks to certain events it has come to my attention that Naruto is stronger than what he would have us believe, much stronger than that. Sir, if I may. He did beat Iruka in an all-out Jujutsu match. Also, he is their child. It's not really that much of a surprise if he's stronger than most, is it? Asked a confused Jounin. Normally yes, but there are reasons I am telling this to you. First off, as I said earlier, you are one of, if not the strongest Jounin that this village has to offer. In a few more years I have no doubt you could claim this hat if you so chose. I am not saying this to praise you, but to justify why I gave you the team I did. Hiruzen took a breather and relaxed into his chair more. Ikumo a few years ago was completely incapable of most any kind of physical activity. Kurenai had tried to help her much like Guy helped his young protege, but where Guy succeeded, Kurenai failed. The girl had then become consumed by her darker emotions, and with as potent as her bloodline was her mind, created a defense to stop her power from tearing her apart. Sadly, the defense it chose took the form of a demon named the Ido. The Ido would have consumed her and went on a rampage using her powers to try and destroy our village had she not met a certain blonde. Sarutobi took a pause here. Kakashi saw the look of sadness flash across the man's eyes as he mentioned the blonde teen, but chose not to say anything out of respect for the man and his personal life. I don't know what Naruto did, but only a year later she had gained near full mastery of her Kekai Genkai, and her physical prowess, while not too impressive, was bordering on genin level. Considering the girl was not too far off from being handicapped by her condition a mere year before makes it all that more astonishing. The Scarecrow was of course surprised by this. He had after all seen the girl perform, and she was at least a Chunin level with her Taijutsu, as well as with her weapons proficiency. He could only imagine how strong she was when she went all out. Ino Yamanaka was at one time a Sasuke fangirl and was one of the more fervent of the bunch as well. In the last year of the academy she made friends with Naruto, and just like Yakumo, there was a massive jump in power. The only thing that was keeping her even slightly better than her once friend Sakura was her clan jutsu, but by the last month of the academy the girl was in the running for Rookie of the Year. Sir, I understand that you've given me quite the powerful bunch of genin, but why are you telling me this? Sighing, Sarutobi continued, we had no idea scratch that we still don't know exactly how powerful Naruto truly is, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was closing in on your level of power. The fact that he's known about the Kyuubi and his heritage since he was 8 has allowed him a massive amount of time to train. He has played an active role in training those two girls. If he was smart enough to mask his true power so he could slip under our radar, I have no doubts he convinced those two to do the same as well. What I am saying, Kakashi, is do not take these three lightly. They may well be at Jounin level already, and Naruto could be even past that if he has learned to harness the power of his ward. Then why did you give them to me, Hokage-sama? I fail to see why they aren't Chunin already, or at least Dokubetsu Genin. Questioned the still confused Scarecrow. If they had managed to attain that level of power on their own, what the hell would they need him for? It's actually a mutual relationship. I'm hoping that they'll rub off on you and give you a reason to get even stronger than you are, and I hope that you will guide them on the path they have chosen to walk. They may be powerful, but they are still just young children about to be thrown into a world of liars, thieves, rapists, and murderers wearing the guise of heroes. You know this just as well as I, Kakashi. They will need someone to guide them through those trying times we all go through. I understand, Hokage-sama. If I may be excused now. Kakashi said as he bowed. Yes, you may go. Wow, Mizuki really went down like that? Spoke a sweat-dropping Ino. Yeah, I know the guys was pretty weak compared to us, but geez. Spoke an equally sweat-dropping Yakumo. Wrapping her arms around Naruto's left arm, Yakumo continued, but this is Naruto-kun we are talking about, and he is my amazingly strong guy after all. Yakumo said as she laid the sweet innocent girl act on his heart as one possibly could. "Whoa, wait a minute. You're amazingly strong guy, he's my strong guy." Once again doing one of her famous 180s in personality, she stuck Naruto's right arm in the middle of her blossoming cleavage and batting her eyelashes she continued, "Isn't that right, Rito-kun? She may be just 12, but damn was she already growing in the right places." It also didn't help that as ninja with higher amounts of chakra, they naturally matured much faster than average people. And boy was Ino using that to her advantage. Ikumo was as usual left pouting as she lacked in the curves department. That's not to say she wasn't an attractive girl in her own right though. Where Ino was sultry and sexy, Yakumo was classy and refined, though she wasn't being very refined at the moment as she was currently tugging her crush towards herself while childishly sticking her tongue out at the rival for her crush's affection. Naruto was, as usual, left sweat dropping and at a loss for words. He dearly cared for both of the girls but could never find the words to tell them that. He was rather stunted in the affection department after all. Wait a minute. At this Ino let go of Naruto's arm she had been tugging at, causing the blonde to tumble into Yakumo, landing them in a very compromising position. Yakumo was far from being a prude, but she wasn't a perv either. Never mind the mini collection of icha she had under her bed. Off but finding herself underneath the body of her crush centimeters away from touching lips, and it was understandable why the poor girl was blushing as much as she was. Before she could take advantage of the moment, Naruto was yanked to his feet by one very bossy Yamanaka. Making sure to get Ino back at a later time, she stood and dusted herself off. "You got some questions to answer, mister?" demanded the demanding Yamanaka. I do," Naruto said as he shook. He knew damn well the power a pissed female could have, and even he wasn't strong enough to fight that battle. Courageous he may be but stupid he was not. "Yay. How come you didn't tell us you were that strong?" At this Yakumo chimed in with a, "Yay. What do you mean?" questioned Naruto. "Well, we knew you were pretty powerful, but we never assumed you were that powerful. I mean the way you and Iruka were trading blows the other day looked like two seasoned jounin going at it." And Yakumo helpfully nodded at this. Nervously scratching the back of his head and chuckling, Naruto said, "Oh yay, that he. Thought you two would forget about that thing." "Naru-kun, that's mean," pouted Yakumo. "Are you trying to keep secrets from us?" asked Ino as she invaded his personal space. Frantically waving his hands, the blonde Kyuubi container attempted to defend himself. No. It's just, well, I never really had a reason to reveal my strength. But I guess with us being shinobi now we're going to find ourselves in some tricky positions, so I guess I should share, huh? Do you think?" The ever bossy Ino scoffed. Alright, well, the Genin had enjoyed a good weekend of either relaxing or beginning some more intensive training, but nonetheless they were back in their classroom one last time to get their team assignments. Iruka walked in with clipboard in hand and a warm smile on his face. He had seen these kids go from snot-nosed brats to snot-nosed brats who could kill someone with their bare hands and defy all laws of nature at a whim. Ah, the joys of being a teacher. Clearing his throat, he attempted to get the class's attention and was prepared to use his infamous demon head jutsu, but was surprised when they actually shoot up when he asked. He knew that they had realized what kind of life they were going to be walking into and that they would need to be at their best, or they just wanted him to get it over with already. Yay, that last one was probably it. Oh well, he had done his part. It was up to their jounin senseis to knock some more sense into them. "Alright class, I'm going to keep it nice and simple. I have seen you all grow up into some talented nin to be, and I can say with the utmost confidence that all of you here have the potential to do great things. Who knows, maybe one of you is the next Hokage, or maybe your team will be the next Sannin. But know this, no matter what, watch out for each other. In this world of ours, friends and comrades may be the only thing between you and death. Cherish the bonds you make. You are now ninja of the leaf, so wear your Hittite with pride. You are the next carriers of the will of fire. My generation has had our time. The future of Konohagakure no Sato is in your hands now. Do us proud." Iruka announced with the utmost amount of pride in his voice. The Genin all looked at each other and nodded with the biggest smiles on their faces. They had done it. Years in the academy had all paid off. Today was the day. But that out of the way, I'll begin announcing teams. First up with Heiichi Echo as sensei, we have team 1 with, and on Iruka went down the list until he had finally reached the clan air groupings. He may have said that they all had the future in their hands, and he meant it, but he especially meant it to these kids. They were to be the future leaders of the founding clans of Konoha after all, and as a consequence would have a direct hand in the laws and policy making of this very village. Team 7 will consist of Yakumo Kurama. Yakumo grinned and crossed her fingers, hoping she got her best friend and crush on her team. Ino Yamanaka, the two girls high-fived with grins. They may be rivals for Naruto's heart, but that didn't mean they hated each other, far from it. Yakumo had lived a sheltered life and had never had any real friends. She of course eventually became friends with Naruto, but he was a guy and her crush. When she met Ino, it was different. She could talk to her about girl things that she couldn't very well talk to Naruto about. Ino was much the same. Sakura had never been a good girlfriend in the first place, so Yukuma was her first actual best girlfriend. And the final member of your team will be Iruka paused intentionally. He had to milk this moment for all it was worth. Both the girls latched onto Naruto like he would disappear at any moment. Naruto Yuzu was as far as he got before the two girls screamed in happiness that they had gotten their crush and pseudo-sensei on their team. They may be Kunoichi now, but they were still preteen girls with a crush after all. Naruto merely sat there with his foxy grin on. He had worried that they wouldn't be placed on the same time, but maybe this was the Sandaime trying to apologize to him. He knew that that was probably the case, but he also knew that the man may also have ulterior motives. Alright you two. Let me finish yay. Now as I was saying your final team member will be Naruto Uzuma. I'm so fucking stupid. The Genin were surprised as Iruka was never one to curse without good reason and he was now also pounding his head on the desk. What the hell was he doing? Naruto narrowed his eyes at this. Unless our sensei is the Hokage himself there is no way that Iruka would have reacted like that. There has to be something to this, but what was oh shit the old man didn't did he? Taking a break from making a spectacle of himself he gave Naruto a pointed look and asked, did you know about this Naruto? Know about what Iruka-sensei? Asked a very suspicious blonde. Your full name? At this all the students turned to look at Naruto. He had a longer name. They had never paid much attention to him and since there wasn't an Uzumaki clan compound they had just assumed his parents were either civilians or forgettable ninja that had died when he was young or something. Naruto sighed before he replied, yay since I was 8. My old sensei told me the whole story. Oh wait Naruto had a sensei when he was young. That explained how he showed up and started doing as decently as he was as well as his 2-year absence from the village. But what was this whole thing about his name? Yes the Hokage wanted it to be known finally so do you mind? Inquired Yuka. If he told these kids there was no doubt the news would spread like wildfire among the village. Knowing the villagers they would either riot in denial, though not very likely, or turn Naruto into a damn celebrity. And he knew Naruto wasn't comfortable with either of those options. Yeah sure. I can handle any backlash it may cause now. I have a feeling the Hokage is prepared as well if he's releasing it, sighed Naruto. This was gonna be a long day. Okay if you say so. The final member of Team 7 is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. It took most of the others to remember why that name was famous, but when it clicked their jaws dropped. Naruto was the son of their Yondaime Hokage. Due to the shock Kiba accidentally said what everyone else was thinking, holy shit Naruto is the son of the Kairoi Senko, Yellow Flash. The only ones not shocked at this discovery were Yakumo and Ino. When Naruto had told them he would share his secrets he damn well meant it. He had told them everything. The fox, his heritage, his sensei, why he met his sensei, all of it. Iruka coughed as a way to try and regain some semblance of order in the class. Team 7 your Jounin sensei will be Hada Kakashi. At this Naruto was surprised. Why wasn't Kakashi teaching the Uchiha kid? He was the only one in the village who could possibly train the kid on how to use his Sharingan. Teammate will be Shikamaru Nara, Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba Inuyasaka. Your sensei will be Kurina Yuuhi. There was no whoop or anything. After that bombshell the kids had been stunned to silence. Taking advantage of the unusual drop in volume in the class Iruka continued, Team 10 under Asuma Sarutobi will consist of Shino Aburam, Choji Akimichi, and Sasuke Uchiha. Grabbing his clipboard and some papers Iruka said his final words to his now ex-students, I'm proud of you guys. Remember my door is always open to any of you. It was an honor teaching you kids. Be safe out there. With that Iruka bowed and the kids bowed to him as a sign of respect to the man. And with that Iruka left the room. Before the kids could begin pestering Naruto with questions Hayate and Genma showed up to grab their teams. Not seconds later Asuma and Kurenai showed up as well to take their teams. As soon as the room was cleared Yakumo and Ino looked at Naruto with concerned eyes. You sure you're gonna be able to handle it Naruto? You remember what you told us might happen if the village ever found out right? Questioned an oddly kind Ino. Yakumo was a girl of few words and simply wrapped her hands around his arm and laid her head on his shoulder. Had this been another time Naruto's fellow blonde would have made a scene, but now was not the time. Naruto needed all the support he could get. With that in mind she mirrored Yakumo. Sighing yet again, yeah I'll be fine. As long as I don't start getting gray hairs from all this sighing I'm doing today haha. Taking his arms out of the grasp of the girls and wrapping an arm around each of the girls' waists, he continued with a grin, besides I got two beautiful and strong kunoichi by my side right? Of course. Spoke a blushing yet still pumped Yamanaka. You bet Naru, murmured the very comfortable Genjutsu user. Though I wonder where our sensei is, she continued. Oh right. Almost forgot about that. Hey Inu. You can come out now. Naruto spoke surprising the girls. Then they sensed it too. The chakra sitting at Iruka's desk. Turning they saw a silver-haired man wearing the standard Jounin uniform with his hit eye 8, covering his left eye with his feet on the desk, reading a certain little orange book. They both face-palmed at that. How the hell had they missed the guy? Guess they had been too worried about Naruto to notice. They made a note to not let that happen again. Had this been anywhere else they very well could have been dead and Naruto wouldn't always be there to save them. I was originally gonna give you three a teamwork test, but seeing your current position I believe that may be a moot point, drawled the man. So you're the famous Kakashi Hataka? Our village's own Sharingan no Kakashi, Yakumo calmly spoke. Naruto had drilled it into them that knowing your comrades was just as important, if not more so, than knowing your enemy. One of the Leaf's best Jounin and son of Tsukumo Haddock, the Konoha no Shirokiba, White Fang of Konoha. We got a pretty good sensei didn't we Rito-kun? Spoke a grinning Ino. Kakashi was heavily surprised by the knowledge these two had on him. Most Chunin didn't even know who his father was and what he had done. Guess he was going to have to take this even more serious than what he had originally planned. Nicely done girls, but you're forgetting one last little tidbit, spoke a grinning Naruto. Turning to Kakashi he began, he was also the student of my father in the second incarnation of Team 7 and only a few years later was a well-known Anbu captain and was in the running for taking the position of head of the Anbu Black Ops. Naruto walked down to meet Kakashi and stuck his hand out, he was also one of the few people who ever gave a shit about me. How have you been Inunai? Finished the now smiling Genin. Kakashi just chuckled and shook his head. He really was in for it with this team. Good to see you again to Naruto Nai. Okay, so now that we are an official team we need to get some things out of the way first. You three know each other better than anyone else in this whole village, but as your sensei I need to know you three just as well so we can actually work together efficiently. At this the three Genin nodded. He wasn't wrong. Just because they could work flawlessly together didn't mean anything if their Jounin leader knew next to nothing about them and their styles. He had much more experience and was far stronger than them well except Naruto. Even still he did have an edge over even Naruto. He had been raised and fought in the last great ninja war and had seen and done things they may never have to. So to start it off let's share our likes, dislikes, hobbies, your dream for the future, as well as general strength level, as well as what you think your specialty is. Pointing at the sole person with a normal hair color on the team he said, why don't you go first Shy One? At that comment both Naruto and Ino chuckled. Yakumo. Shy. But the noticeable tick mark she began, first off I'm not shy you damn scarecrow. I just prefer not to say much got it. Anyways my likes are Naruto-kun, Ino, and T. My dislikes when Ino tries to steal my Naruto-kun from me, people who intrude on me when I'm trying to get some peace and quiet arrogant jerks, and people who use others. My hobbies include painting, observing others, meditating, and sightseeing. My dream for the future is to have a happy family with Naruto-kun. My general strength level. Well Naruto-kun says I'm around low Jounin level without my Jinjutsu. And my specialty is of course my Jinjutsu, though I'm fairly decent at Iryojutsu as well as stealth. An assassin who can make her Jinutsus come to life. If there was ever more of a perfect assassin she'd be it. Alright Blondie you're up next. At this both Naruto and Ino looked at each other questioningly. Kakashi sweat dropped, oops. Female Blondie you go next I guess. Deadpanning Ino started, Dumbus. My likes are Ruto-kun, Yakumo, my family, and vegetable stew. My dislikes are people who purposely destroy nature, Yakumo when she tries to butt in on my Ruto time, assholes, and fangirls. Of course my hobbies are tending to my family garden, spending time with Ruto, and studying the mind arts. My dream for the future is to be a good clan head and have a bunch of little blonde children with Ruto-kun. My strength level well I'm not as good as Yakumo yet, but Ruto says I'm around high Chunin level. My specialty is of course my clan's jutsu meaning I'm great for recon and interrogation. I'm also pretty good with poisons and the like. I'm actually pretty good at Iryojutsu too, boasted the proud Yamanaka. Can't say I blame the girl. A year ago she was a fangirl herself and to have reached her skill level in that time gives her right to be proud. But still she's pretty much strictly a support member and sadly at this time our weakest link when compared to her teammates. However Naruto is probably working on getting her up to snuff so no worries yet. Well now on to our last member. Your turn short stack, the Jounin said with a teasing eye smile how the hell could an eye smile be teasing? The team grew a tick mark, I grew damn it. And he was right. When he was a kid he had been rather malnourished and so was pretty short for his age. But now. Naruto stood at a good 5 foot 5 inches, which was a good solid height for his age. With a huff Naruto spoke, my likes are Yakumo-chan, Ino-chan, my old sensei Vincent, Raymond, and the color orange. My dislikes are arrogant assholes, child abusers, a certain Uchiha, and people who prejudge others. At the remark about a certain Uchiha Kakashi grew curious. Uchiha. There are only 2 left in the world and Itachi never did anything to hurt the kid. In fact Naruto loved Itachi. And as far as I know Sasuke and Naruto could care less about the other. Who could it be? My hobbies include training, reading, researching, working on my own seals, and fighting people who give me a challenge. My strength level without the help of my tenant, I'd say about Jounin or Anbu level. I haven't really had a reason to use Kyuubi's chakra, but I can control up to 3 tails perfectly. At the 4th tail I can somewhat control it, but my bloodlust becomes hard for me to fight back. At 5 yay, let's hope none of you are around if I ever have to use 5 tails. My specialties are Fuinjutsu, Ninjutsu, and Kenjutsu. I'm decent at all other ninja arts. Naruto finished like he was talking about the weather. Oh yay, I forgot that because of Kyuubi I'm an empath. It makes me a sensor of sorts. Holy shit, he's that strong at 14, and that's without the Kyuubi. This kid can probably give Jiraiya a run for his money. I might as well hand the team over to him. Guess Hokage-sama was right. I'm gonna have to get stronger if I wanna keep up with these kids. Clapping his hands together and doing an eye smile, the scarecrow said, well, I guess it's my turn. My likes, my dislikes, good question. My hobbies are R-rated he. My strength, well, you guys seem to know that pretty well. My specialty is ninjutsu and assassination, just do it that. Though I know my fair share of destructive jutsu as well. He looked at his team expecting them to be disappointed at what he had shared, but instead he found Naruto was eating ramen and Ino and Yakuma were talking about clothes. Instantly Kakashi was in the corner of the rooftop crouched over with a mini rain cloud over him. You guys are so mean. Seeing that they weren't going to care anytime soon, he returned to normal and with another eye smile, Kakashi began speaking again. Well, I had originally planned on testing you guys, but again that's a moot point. Instead you have the day off and come tomorrow we will begin training. Our schedule will be Monday, Tuesday. Intensive training. Wednesday through Friday will be group exercises as well as missions. And Saturday and Sunday will be time to relax. Meet at training ground 7 tomorrow morning at 6. Jana. And with that Kakashi shunshin it away. So Rito, tomorrow we start? Asked Ino. Yup, now that the council has no say in what we do and now that we have a Jounin sensei to back us, the real training begins tomorrow. Naruto replied. Ikumo and Ino both sighed at this. Looks like it was back to boot camp. Naruto style. It had been a month since Team 7 had been initiated as unofficial team of Konoha, and since then not much had changed with the village. Even the members of Team 7 hadn't changed all that much. Naruto still wore the same clothes he had been wearing since the academy, except now he usually wore his ragged cloak on top of that and left it unzipped, as well as he now carried a katana at his left hip. The hilt was deep crimson red and it had a black tassel that dangled from the pommel. Kakashi was still a pervert and lazy, but his fellow Joinin could feel a change in his aura. It still exuded that same tone of laziness, but underneath that was a newfound well of power. Kakashi was strong, everyone knew that, but it seemed like he had gained a drive to grow even stronger once more. Ikumo had done the most drastic change and had completely changed up her outfit. She now wore tight black shinobi pants taped at the ankle and black shinobi sandals. She wore a black tank top underneath a mesh top, and over that she wore a deep purple sweater whose sleeves went past her hands. Hidden in the sleeves were seals Naruto had drawn that held senbon, kunai, shuriken, and her paintbrushes. Those same weapons were covered in various poisons that Ino had actually made especially for her. Some of them kept her victims awake longer, knocked them out, paralyzed them, or straight up killed them on the spot. She had taken to covering her mouth with her sleeves, yes, just like a certain rancor from Bleach when talking. Ino had stayed pretty much the same, except she now carried 2 scrolls stacked on top of each other at the small of her back. One scroll contained various types of poisons meant for enemies. The one underneath that one carried assorted medical supplies should anybody need her assistance. At first the training had started off rather bumpy as the 3 genin were trying to get comfortable with Kakashi and vice versa. Once that bump had been passed, training went off without a hitch. Not even the Hokage knew exactly how strong the team was, as all Kakashi was willing to share with him was that the team works seamlessly together as a unit and each of us has grown in some way. This of course bothered the man to no end, as one of the reasons he had wanted Kakashi to be their sensei was to have an insider of sorts. He highly doubted that they were thinking of anything close to betraying the village, but still he wasn't comfortable not knowing how strong his soldiers were. At current time we find our Hokage along with the ninja council dealing with said team. So as I understand, Jounin Haddock, you wish for permission to leave the village for 2 months on a training trip. What exactly would warrant this? The ninja council members were just as curious. There had never been a request such as this from a genin team, let alone such a new genin team. Chunins and Jounins. Sure, but fresh out of the academy genin. Unheard of. If I may, Hokage-sama. Interjected the team's powerhouse. It still hurt the man deeply to hear a teen he had once bottle-fed and cared for refer to him in such a way, but he hid it well. He had no one to blame for it but himself. You may, genin. He motioned. Well sir, the reason we feel it would benefit us was as far as Naruto got before he was interrupted by the chamber doors being slammed open by the members of the civilian council. All those present narrowed their eyes at this. What right did they have to interrupt this? What is the meaning of this Hokage? Holding a meeting without us? Shouted one indescript member of the council. Shouts of agreement echoed throughout the small gathering of civilians. Sarutobi's old teammates and rival for the hat made their way to the forefront of the crowd as well. Indeed, Hiruzen. What are you doing performing such things behind our ba? Enough. Shouted Hiruzen, flaring his chakra as well as his kai, killing intent, forcing many to their knees. Coming to a standing position he continued, I have watched you all run my sensei's village to the ground, all while disrespecting me and my position, and I've had enough of it. You have all forgotten that this is no democracy. This is a shinobi village and you are all civilians. Meaning you have absolutely no say in how I command my soldiers. Pointing at Kaharu, Hamura and Danzo he continued his rant, and you three. You seem to have forgotten your place as well. You do not tell me what to do. You are my advisors, meaning you advise me and nothing more. I have final say when it comes to all matters of this village, you do not. Letting loose a vast amount of chakra causing even some of the clan heads to sweat he spoke, do I make myself clear, civilians? Strained murmurs of yes Hokage-sama rang through the crowd. Sarutobi took his seat once more and dispersed his chakra, letting the civilians stand once more. Good. I hope I don't have to do this again. Anbu. Escort these people out. It was with grumbles that the room was finally cleared of the civilians. Motioning with his hands like nothing had happened he intoned, you were saying Genin Namikaze. Yes, I had an impact on the old man that night. Glad you're coming back, thought a smirking Naruto. Coughing he spoke with a straight face, yes, well as it stands my team and myself have need of more space to practice both our own individual techniques as well group ones that would cause quite a bit of collateral damage to the village and any training ground in the village. And what of the Forest of Death? Or even the training fields behind the Hokage monument? Would they not meet your needs? Inquired the ever-stoic Hyuga head. Or even the Anbu training grounds? Those are made to handle such things, continued the feral Tsumin Yuzaka. If I may be blunt, council and Hokage? Questioned Naruto. At their approval he bluntly stated, normally yes, but the use of my furry tenant is included in some of these, as well as Yakumo's own bloodline. We also cannot get real-world experience here in the village, and being honest, we knew you would never permit our group to even attempt higher-ranking missions, so we figured that if we went out to train, we would encounter people to test us. It's damn smart. Was the collective thought of among the ninja council. Hokage-sama, if I may. Spoke a surprisingly alert Narashikaku. After getting the okay to canteen from his commander he rose from his seat and with a sigh began to speak, I think this may prove to be quite the boon for us as a village in quite a few ways. Not only will we have possibly one of our strongest jounins accompany possibly our strongest genin squad outside, they could, for the lack of a better term, serve as advertisements to both our allies as well as our enemies. Shikaku saw that he had piqued the interest of all those present. He continued with another sigh, by sending out these four, they would obviously encounter both our allies as well as enemies. Of course our enemies may see this as an opportunity to pick one of our teams off, but when they are deftly handled by a mere genin squad, well, you can imagine the ensuing rumors. Of course we all know that this particular team is of course far from average, but those that would serve as messengers of this news don't have to. His speech was met with the whole room smirking at the deviousness of it all. Hey, you can't blame them. These are people trained to use any tactic to win the battle, or in this case stop a battle from even happening. It was dirty, underhanded, and secretive, or in other words a perfect plan for a village of trained assassins. Only minutes later Team 7 was walking out of the Hokage Tower with a scroll signed by every member of the Ninja Council, as well as the Hokage himself, allowing them almost Sanin travel rights. It was weeks later we find Team 7 sitting around a campfire after having returned from gaining the bounty of yet another overly cocky missing nin. This had been taken care of by Ino personally. He had said something about her being a bimbo, and the rest of the team knew to let her handle it. It was only by sheer luck that they had been able to save the head from being melted by a corrosive acid the Yamanaka had injected into the man via a rather uncomfortable place that things should not be injected into. Within the span of a few weeks the team had managed to grow even more as a team, thanks to them not having to worry about endangering any innocents. The only innocents that suffered were the poor innocent trees they slaughtered on a regular basis. Of course they had been able to work on individual skills some, but the whole purpose of this trip was to get even more comfortable with each other and be able to more easily be able to not only coordinate their individual attacks, but also their team attacks. Those same team attacks ranged from small jutsu use and to jutsu combinations to joint jutsu combinations on a massive scale. As individuals they were strong and fearsome, especially Naruto and Kakashi, but as a team they were near undefeatable. They had finally found out where Naruto stood without the help of his tenant, and he and Kakashi were currently tied for wins and losses in their spars. Said spars looked more like battles to the death that had actually given Ino quite a bit of valuable experience in healing various burns, cuts, gashes, broken bones, and several other otherwise life-threatening wounds. Naruto of course needed no help in that department. It was a topic that had actually piqued Naruto's interest. Whenever he had used even the smallest amounts of Kyuubi's chakra in the past, he always felt the telltale signs of said chakra beast's bloodlust and anger, but when he was healed, he felt none of that. With that in mind, he had elected to use today's solo training time to get some questions he had answered. Entering a meditative state, he soon found himself in the sewer that was his mind. It had become quite clean in recent years due to his new outlook in life and all, but no matter how good life was going for him, it remained a sewer still. The waters had lowered until they merely looked like a puddle, the walls looked much cleaner, and the pipes that represented his chakra pathways shined a bright bronze. The young Uzumaki followed the pipes and the huge source of power to the open chamber where the strongest of the Biju resided. Of course, being a massive construct of chakra didn't take away from the fact that the Kyuubi was still a kitsune, which is why our hero currently finds the snoozing form of the fox. Naruto now had a dilemma on his hands. He had to find a way to wake up the massive fox without ticking it off. If he pissed it off, then he would get zero answers and be booted from his own damn mind. For as old as the fox was, it still acted like a teenager. Either that or the fox was affected by the person it was being contained in. Naruto paced back and forth with his hands folded behind him, trying to think of a good way to pleasantly wake up the sleeping furball without getting my ass chewed out. After 5 minutes of pacing, Naruto snapped his fingers. We're talking about a giant fox here. What better way to wake up a giant fox than with a giant rabbit? Using the fact that this was his mind to his advantage, the blonde imagined a fluffy white bunny except on a much larger scale. And with the poof, said image took physical. Mental. It took form. The thing was almost as big as him. He sent it into the cage and the next thing he knew was he had giant bunny blood splattering all over him. Gross. Looking up, he saw the Biju grinning at him as it cleaned the blood from its fur. Well my host, that was a good little treat. Lowering itself onto its haunches and resting its head on its front paws, it looked at its jailer with a bored look. Now I assume you woke me for some reason or other. I may be in a decent mood, but I would much like to get back to my nap, so if you would please hurry. Naruto nodded. Right, well, I just got a couple of questions you may have the answers to. Noticing the fox looked just the slightest bit more interested, he continued. Well, I know that because I have you stuck in me. My empath sense has become something akin to radar. I was just wondering if that would be passed down along with the Uzumaki vitality and all that. Well, yes, it would be possible. It would require some work on both our parts. You are correct, I am the reason the sense was heightened to unseen levels, and it's that very reason that should you mate with a female, normally the offspring would not be born with the power. I would have to pump some of my own yoki into your sperm, infusing them with said yoki to make it possible. The blonde teen nodded at that. It made sense. Had he not had the Kyuubi, he wouldn't have the power in the first place. The only thing is that the child will not have it anywhere close to your level. Because you have my chakra constantly being siphoned into your body, the sense has become dependent on it. It's using my yoki as a source of energy. Since the child will not have the yoki constantly flowing through its pathways, the sense will not have enough energy to work to its full potential. Lectured the kitsune. Yeah, that does make sense. Alright, thanks. My other question is about my healing factor. I know we Uzumaki are extremely durable, and I've become even more so thanks to you, but whenever my healing factor kicks in, I know it's not your yoki that's doing it. Why is my healing factor so advanced? The fox paused to stretch before it continued. Well, your healing prowess is thanks to a lot of different factors. Part of it is your Uzumaki blood, another part is having me, another part is this damn seal here, and the last part is your father's blood. At this, Naruto was surprised. His father's blood. The guy was an orphan and had never been able to find out who his parents were. What was in his blood to be able to contribute to his ungodly healing factor? And how the hell did the fox know who they were? Don't worry, I'll get to that, but first my part in it. You see, the seal you have on you may be vastly different from that of your mother and your ancestor Mito, but they also serve the same basic principle, binding me to them damn near down to the soul. Because of this I have absorbed some qualities from them, and vice versa. Your seal is much different in that you are allowed access to much more of my power, but in exchange we are quite literally bonded at the soul. This has allowed for some of my own qualities to seep into you. So my own greatness combined with the vitality of two very powerful Uzumaki women, and you have become close to being immortal. Normally the only way that you would possibly be able to die would be via decapitation or someone ripping out your beating heart. Anything short of that and you'll be coming back. You'd also be victim to the ravages of time eventually. Probably not until you hit your hundreds or so, but you'd still fall victim to time. It looked like the Kyuubi had finally finished, but with a pointed look Naruto shut his mouth. Now, one of the most interesting things that contributes to your healing is your father's blood. How much of the inner workings do you know about your father's famed Hiraishin? Although he hadn't been able to fully master the technique yet, he had of course studied the notes on it. The thing was a Fuinjutsu masterpiece almost on par with the one on his stomach. Well, I know that the basic principle of it is that it bends the fabric of space and time around two certain points, the seal marker and the user. Using chakra, the user is able to make a tunnel of sorts between the 2 points, making travel in between the points instantaneous. It's one of a small handful of known Jikiken, time-space, jutsu. Yes, and the other Jikiken techniques are not nearly as impressive. Do you realize what you have just said? Your father is bending the very fabric of the universe to his whim with not but his chakra. If he had lived to be as old as the monkey, I have no doubt he would have been able to use the technique without the marker. But back on topic. What your father is doing is something not even most of us Biju are able to do. I myself only have a very rudimentary ability to do something similar, and I'm thousands of years old. Spoke the now clearly awake Kitsune. It may have at one point been angry at the man, but even it had to respect someone who was able to redirect a Bijuadama, tailed beast ball, using a highly advanced Jikiken jutsu. As he finally came to realize what the technique truly was, Naruto's jaw dropped. His father was literally playing Kami. The seals on the marker were honestly not all that complex. He had been able to understand a chunk of them after a couple of months and all of them after 3 years. What the hell else was his father doing that could possibly make such a thing possible? It's not what your father was doing, but more like what his chakra was doing. At hearing the booming voice, the teen looked questioningly at the massive Kitsu. What does his chakra have to do with this? Every living thing on this planet has an affinity. Everything from Uninjin down to the smallest insect has an affinity to one or more of the elements. Some fall into the main 5 of fire, water, earth, wind, and lightning. Others, however, fall into sub-elements such as ice, magma, metal, and even light and dark themselves. Your father was from a very unique clan thought to have died out during the clan wars. That clan was responsible for the handful of known Jikiken techniques. The Namikaze clan was a clan feared by many for their jutsu and their affinity to Jikiken. Others looked at them as demons as they believed only the gods should be able to mess with time and space. Eventually the clan grew too full of themselves and attempted to time travel and plane jump. They failed, and the backlash caused by that failure cost them more than half of their numbers. The other clans heard of their weakened state and pounced. Soon the clan had been erased from the annals of history for fear that others would attempt to recreate their techniques. Only someone the age of your Shadain would have any kind of knowledge on that clan. Naruto sat there awestruck. He was not from just one clan that had been wiped out due to fear of their strength but two. But what made them so special? I mean, what gave them their affinity to Jikiken? I myself do not know of their origins as they had been around when the Rakuto Sennin was alive. However, I do know that their chakra had special properties. Much like Uzumaki chakra grants the user vitality and endurance, Namikaze gifts them with dense and powerful chakra. Their chakra was so thick and strong they could bend the universe as they pleased. It's that very chakra that allowed your father to invent the technique that gave him his name, and it's that very chakra that now runs through your veins. But how does that affect my healing? The Namikaze clan were like the Uzumaki in that because of the properties of their chakra and blood, they were harder to kill than the average human. With the Namikaze, their cells reproduced so rapidly and for so long that they had become near invulnerable to the destruction of time. Your mother looked to be in her 20s well into her 30s, and your father was much the same. You'll probably look 20 well into your 60s. You, my vessel, are the closest to being immortal any ninja has ever gotten. Naruto sat on his ass too shocked to speak. He prided himself on being able to control his emotions and not look well like a fool, but this was just one of those moments. How could he not be shocked? At the age of 14 he was closer than anybody in the elemental nations to damn well being a kami. Everything about him was near perfection. He was bred to be great. Naruto sat there gaping like a fish. The kitsune sweat dropped. Maybe it had said too much in one sitting. Coughing into its pause it continued, yes, well, that may well be a very intelligent response in the making. You would do well to remember who is after you and who else would come for you if they knew what you do. You may have the potential to even equal me, but without the training to use any of it properly, that's all it will be, potential. As it stands, you are indeed strong, but nowhere near the level of those who would see you dead or under a microscope. Still too shocked by all of it, Naruto merely nodded with his mouth still wide open. The sweat drop. The kitsune had returned much larger this time. I'll leave you to cope then. And with that, Naruto was ejected from his mind. A week later we find our protagonist on his own meditating. After learning about everything from his tenant, he had began to push his own training to even greater heights. To do so, he had apologized to Ino and Yakumo for having to give them to Kakashi to continue their training, but they had understood. It actually gave them even more incentive to grow stronger. If they planned to help their blonde crush with the enemies and situations he would find himself in, then they would need to be strong as they could be. Kakashi had also understood and had even vowed that he would be there too. No matter what, they were his students and he would help them any way he could. At the current moment, the teen was meditating to get a feel for the different chakras coursing through his body. Of course, since he had been born with them and they had thusly grown into him, the different chakras had blended into one perfect balanced source. He could still, however, feel the different qualities his chakra had. It was like Namika's, Uzumaki, and Kyuubi's yoki were rivers that all flowed into the lake that was his chakra. To begin to truly use the powers of each, he had to be able to differentiate between them all. Using Namika's chakra to do an Uzumaki technique may end less than pleasantly for him. It struck him as odd that chakra had a feel to it, an emotion of sorts. Maybe he was the only one able to sense it due to his empath powers, but nonetheless it was there. Maybe it had something to do with the chakra itself. Maybe it was like blood in that it carried parts of its originator, his ancestor. I'm getting off track here. Okay, so let me see. Naruto thought as he searched through his chakra pool. Anger, malevolence, power, and superiority. That's definitely the FuzzBallz yoki. Life, vitality, and energy. That's my Uzumaki chakra. Now where is was as far as his thought process went before he felt it. Holy fuck. This feeling. Strength, dominance, force, what is this? Is this how Namika's chakra feels? It's fuck. AHH. Screamed the blonde as he squeezed his eyes and held his head. Light controls everything. Without it you can't protect anything, not even yourself. Echoed a rumbling voice in his head. Who the fuck are you? Get out of my head. Screamed the blonde in agonizing pain. Who are you? There is room only for one in this kit's mind and I am it. Leave here, no. Foolish kitsune. You hold no power over me. Be silent. Inside the cage we see the great Kyuubi ramming the gates of its cage in an effort to help its vessel. With a mighty roar, the kitsune unleashes 5 tails of its power, letting it flow into every crack and crevice of its prison. Kit. Was the last thing heard from the mightiest of the Bijuu. Who are you and what do you want? Yelled the panicking teen. He could no longer hear, let alone feel the Kyuubi's presence. Calm yourself, child. I am not going to harm you or that beast. As for who I am your ancestor. I am Yamato Namikaze. Now where could those flowers be? They shouldn't be this hard to find here, spoke a beautiful teen. She had a porcelain face complemented by the dark hair that framed her face. She looked to be about 16 and had the curves to prove it. Though said curves were somewhat hidden by the pink kimono she wore. She carried a small wicker basket on her right arm as she leisurely strolled through the forest. Now I could have sworn I saw some of the flowers I need when we walked through this path. Where could she? Stopped her train of thought abruptly as she saw the destruction of the forest. Trees were either burned, sliced clean, or some combination of the two. The ground was no better as it was cratered as if it hit by a small meteor shower. Venturing further into the destruction she saw who she thought to be the culprit in a meditative pose. It was a teen around her age with wild blonde hair that fell around his head in gentle spikes. The teen was currently shirtless, showing her what kind of training he did, and boy was she blushing. On his lap sat a beautifully crafted okatana with a crimson red hilt and a length of black cloth hanging from the pommel. You know it's kinda rude to stare at someone shirtless, miss, spoke the teen. She eeped before she chuckled in attempt to regain some composure. Yes, well, I was merely admiring your sword, and immediately her mind shot to the gutter. If he's that toned up there, I wonder if no bad Haku. I mean, well, what happened here? She nervously asked. Chuckling, the blonde opened his eyes to reveal the most beautiful sapphire blue eyes she had ever seen. He rose from his position on the floor to show that he was a couple inches taller than her. He grabbed his ragged black cloak from a hanging tree branch and threw it on, leaving it unzipped. He walked up to her carrying his blade in his left hand lazily. Each step he took closer to her, her blush grew darker. An arm's distance away he lifted his hand to offer a handshake. My name's Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Spoke the blonde Adonis with his foxy grin plastered on his face. Slipping her hand in his she nervously chuckled and said, Haku. Haku Momoichi. On to the story. So what are you doing out in this part of the forests of Hai no Kuni? Inquired our blonde protagonist from his sitting position. He of course had an inkling of what she was doing here, but hey, he could be wrong. Oh. The dark-haired teen frantically shot to her feet and began to gather her things. I'm actually here looking for a specific type of herb. What kind of herb? I might be able to help. Volunteered our hero. Before anything more could be said, both individuals could feel a spike of chakra, which meant a battle. Haku narrowed her eyes as she could see the hints that the Kurigakure no Jutsu, Hidden Mist, had been used, and she knew only one person in this area who used that technique in battle. Naruto had of course noticed much before Haku had, but kept it from showing on his face. He knew the name Momoichi and the person causing the chakra spike. One Zabuza Momoichi. The demon of the bloody mist and former member of the Kirin no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu, 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. He knew Zabuza was a powerful enemy, and a couple months ago Kakashi would have been able to go toe-to-toe with the guy with some difficulty. But that was not the Kakashi the so-called demon was fighting. This Kakashi was the jounin who was trained by the Kiroi Senku of Konoha. The same man who knew over 1000 jutsu and had created 2 jutsu unique to him. Zabuza frankly stood no chance. I apologize Naruto-kun, but I must be going now, and with that the ice user was gone. She forgot her basket. Guess I should return it to her. Whistling a jaunty tune of some sort, Naruto leisurely made his way to where he knew the fight was taking place. The sounds of steel clashing against steel echoed through what was once a thick forest now being a man-made clearing. "Come on Zabuza. Where is that famous demon of the Mistad?" spoke a smirking Kakashi. "Geez, I really gotta stop letting those 3 rub off on me. I was never this battle happy. But I do admit it is pretty fun." The shirtless swordsman merely grunted in response. "I know that he was feared for a reason, but this is ridiculous. He's fighting back my attacks using only kunai." Ikumo and Ino sat atop a tree branch not too far away enjoying the show. Individually Zabuza would be a problem, but together Yakumo and Ino were confident enough to be able to handle him. Besides, Kakashi was handling things well enough and they could feel Naruto making his way over. "Hey Ino, you want her or should I?" spoke a smirking Yakumo. Oh. Well, I got the last one so you can go ahead," spoke a grinning blonde. Geez, Naruto had really done a number on them. Aku came blazing into the clearing intent on helping her master. Preparing some senbon she was about to throw them to at least throw Kakashi off. Zabu was all she could get out before she received a sandal to her stomach. She was thrown clear into a tree with enough force to splinter it. Giggling from behind her sleeve, the Genjutsu user mocked, "Nah. My sensei is enjoying the fight and a 2-on-1 fight is hardly fair, so just sit there and watch, okay?" She turned to leave the girl, but would have been skewered by senbon had she not vanished. Aku's eyes widened. "Where did she? You know I get that we're ninja and all, but really? When my back is turned." Aku would have moved if she didn't feel the cold steel of a sharpened kunai at her throat. The dark-haired ice user witnessed Zabuza get thrown clear across the forest via Kakashi's use of a Doton jutsu from her downed position. With a steely look in her, she prepared herself for what she was going to do. "I must help Zabuza-sama at any cost." She formed the one-handed seals for her signature jutsu. As she formed the last of the seals, she threw her head back against Ikumo's abdomen, allowing her enough room to escape. With a burst of chakra she called out, "Hijutsu. Makyohai Asho. Secret art. Demonic ice mirrors." A dome of said mirrors formed around the brunette teen, encasing her in the icy trap. "I apologize for having to use this technique on you, but I must help my master," said the solemn Haku. She hated to use this technique because it meant she was going for the killing blow and she would rather not have to kill. Killing never sat well with her. As she prepared to end the fight as quick as possible, she expected to see some fear in the girl, but all she saw was her form shaking. She must be crying cause she doesn't want to die. "I am sorry, but I must help Zabuza-sama." With that last thought, Haku launched a senbon and watched as the young girl was turned into a pincushion. Haku looked down in shame. "Oh, you think you killed me?" Haku snapped up to see the reflections of herself begin to morph into the form of the brunette. "What, how?" "Well, you see, you've made your own grave with this technique. You showed your full hand to finish a battle you thought would be easy without knowing the cards your enemy held." Haku tried to escape the mirror but found she was stuck inside the mirror itself. "She's turned my own technique on me. How?" "Allow me to introduce myself," Haku heard from behind her. Turning, she found the girl she thought she had killed standing in a field of freshly fallen snow. "My name is Yakumo Kurama." And it was at that moment Haku began sweating. She may not have been from Konoha, but the Kurama family was known throughout the nations for being able to make their genjutsu become reality. "Now I would rather not have to do this, but you've left me no choice. Goodbye, Miss Ice User." Haku began to panic as she saw things rising from the snow. They looked like frozen corpses that had been released from hell itself. She closed her eyes and prepared for the inevitable. "I'm sorry Zabuza-sama, I have failed you." She was ready to accept her fate before she heard the sound of something smacking against flesh and an even louder yelp of pain. Opening her eyes, she saw the blonde she had met in the forest and the brunette who was going to murder her with her own technique on the floor, holding her rear in pain. All she could do was sweat drop at the ridiculousness of the situation. She had been ready to die, but she had been saved because the girl who was going to kill her had been spanked. Now Yakumo, normally I would congratulate you, but considering I would much like to keep our lovely Yukiana, Snow Woman, here alive and unharmed, well, you see what happened." After getting her blush under control, she asked, "Naruto-kun, what are you doing here?" inquired the very curious ice user. "Hey, wait a minute, Naruto-kun, where do you think?" was all Yakumo could get out before she was smacked on her still tender rear. "Naru-kun. What was that for?" pouted the genjutsu user. "Play nice, Yakumo, and I'll tell you later," admonished the blonde. Turning to Haku, he answered, "Here to save you, of course. Now let's see what we can do about your father." Na. Haku's eyes widened at being reminded about Zabuza and his current position. "Zabu," was all she got put before she was flicked on the nose. Scrunching up her face at the flick, she looked at Naruto, pouting. "Why is no one letting me finish my sentences today?" "Pause, we can," grinned the cheeky blonde. "Now let's get out of here." And with a snap of the finger, the frozen wasteland was gone, to be replaced by Zabuza rocketing across the field and Kakashi hot on his tail, Rikiri, lightning edge, in hand. Naruto seemingly phased out of existence, only to appear before Kakashi, catching his wrist before he could deliver the finishing blow. Kakashi merely looked up, giving his student a questioning gaze. "Potential allies," was all the Jinchuriki said, and Kakashi just nodded his head. It made sense. Zabuza and his apprentice would be a good addition to the village. Zabuza looked up at the kid who had saved him oddly. Who the hell was he and why did he seem familiar? "I swear I've seen that blade before. And the hair. Who is this kid?" Zabuza would have continued his thoughts had Haku not rushed over to him. He noticed the girl seemed rather distraught over something. "Hey, why you looking all depressed, Haku?" grunted the swordsman. Even on his last legs he was still a hard ass, it seemed. Sniffling, she explained, "I was worried I would lose you. I thought I had failed," only to be interrupted by Zabuza musing her hair. "Hey, you did good. It's my fault we ended up in this situation. I thought they were here for the bounty on my head or something like that." At hearing that, Kakashi and his team attempted to look as innocent as possible. "Well, thanks to Naruto-kun." "Hey, whoa there, kun," teased Zabuza. Haku merely gained a tick mark. "Why is no one letting me finish my sentences?" At that, everyone there laughed at the poor girl's expense. After everyone had managed to regain their breath, Naruto walked up to the pair. "Well, I actually have a question for you two. How would you like to stop having to constantly look behind your backs?" questioned the blonde Uzumaki. Zabuza wearily looked at the teen. "Hold on, what are you saying?" "Well, I have some pull with the Hokage, and I'm sure if I vouched for you two, you would have no problem becoming a part of Konoha's forces. My family name would also help with the villagers and all as well," Naruto casually stated. He wasn't wrong about any of it. Zabuza merely grunted before he slowly rose to a standing position, using his giant blade as a crutch. "That reminds me. You and that blade you have there look really familiar to me. What's your name, kid?" The Kyuubi container stuck his hand out. "Name's Naruto." Naruto Yuzu with a steely glint in his eyes. He grabbed Zabuza and Haku in a show of speed and brought them to where his teammates were. His reason for this? A pack of those nasty creatures he had seen years ago when he first started training. This time though, they looked to be out for blood. "What the fuck are those?" asked his fellow blonde, a sentiment shared by all present. "I don't know, but I need you all to stay here. None of you are in good enough shape to even harm these things." With a blink, Naruto was only inches from the thing's blade drawn. However, to his surprise, his blade was blocked way too easily for his comfort. In a matter of a second, he was surrounded and about to become pulp, with all the creatures using their spiked limbs as deadly blunt weapons. With a backflip, he was on top of the shoulders of one of them before they could get to him. Brandishing his blade once more, he attempted to rid it of its head. However, he was smashed in the side by another of the creatures, sending him flying into several trees, with the clear sound of bone breaking as he impacted. The others were having a hard enough time following all of this, as the battle was happening at speeds way beyond their level. Even Kakashi's Sharingan was having trouble keeping up. As soon as they saw and heard Naruto get hit and get sent clear into the trees, they panicked, Yakumo, Ino, and Haku especially. They were about ready to jump in and help in any way they could before they saw Naruto struggle to rise to his feet. Spitting out a wad of blood, he grunted, "No. They're not here for you. They're here for me. I can handle this." "But why are they here for me? They were never this strong, and if I got far enough away before, they would leave me be. Why are these ones so intent on killing me? They know who you are. They smell it on you," intoned the voice of his ancestor. Quickly bringing up his katana to block an incoming strike and ducking another, he tried to attack once more, only to have to weave through several more spiked limbs. He quickly jumped away from the pack to give himself room to breathe. "Fuck, this is getting ridiculous. These creatures will not rest until you are dead. Why me? And why now? They've never been this bloodthirsty before." Again, Naruto found himself dodging and weaving his way through a mob of flying limbs, intent on smashing his head in. "Right now is not the time to explain, but I will say this, they sense the Namika's blood in you, and they will stop at nothing to see it gone from this world. Enough of making a fool of yourself. Dispose of these beasts." "Yay, I got it. Time to get serious." With a roar, Naruto unleashed some of his chakra, allowing it to coalesce around him. This was not a separation of his different sources, but his true chakra, and it blazed a royal shade of purple. His eyes narrowed and went from sapphire jewels of mirth to frozen chips of ice. This is what he had dubbed his battle mode. All traces of emotion were dead to him in this state of mind, and his only goals were to defeat whoever stood in his way at any cost and protect those close to him. His companions were all shocked at the amount of energy he was putting out. Kakashi noticed the change in his demeanor and posture, as well as the feel of his chakra. Yakumo and Ino noticed as well. Normally Naruto's chakra gave off the feel of warmth and safety, but now those feelings were buried underneath a well of dominance and authority. If they were being truthful, it was kind of hot. Haku and Zabuza had only known the blonde for a short time and were shocked beyond belief at what this teen was doing. To be that strong at his age was almost unheard of. Picking their jaws up off the floor, Haku was only barely able to catch the scabbard of Naruto's okatana. "You asked for my name, right, Zabuza?" Looking up, they saw Naruto staring at the oncoming pack of creatures, twirling his okatana by the tassel on its pommel. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. And this was my mother, Kushina Uzumaki's sword." All Zabuza could do was gape. He was the child of the Konoha no Kairoi Senko Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, the Konoha no Akashai, Red Death of Konoha. As soon as the creatures were in range, Naruto tossed a blade like a spear with enough force to pierce straight through the thick hide of one of the beasts. Within a flash, Naruto was once more holding his blade in the midst of the pack and was unleashing an innumerable amount of slashes all around him, but he knew it was far from over. The creatures had extremely thick hide and some minor healing factor. They were also extremely hard to put down. Hell, the one who had been pierced by his blade was still going strong. With that in mind, Naruto sent Futen chakra through the blade and calmly spoke, "Futen. Shinkiken, Vacuum Sword." Naruto's allies' field of vision was cut short as a dome of pure wind nature chakra entrapped the area occupied by the creatures and Naruto. "Wait, that looks more like your Hyuga clan's Hakashu Kaiten, Heavenly Spin." Zabuza grunted out. "No, it looks like that because Naruto has created so many slashes with Shinkiken in such a short amount of time, they have created that dome," spoke a flabbergasted Kakashi. He knew Naruto was good and he had the scars to prove that, but what had he been doing the past couple of days on his own to get this good? Again Zabuza's jaw met the floor. He had seen some of the greatest sword wielders in his day, hell, he was one of the best, but this was incredible. They were cut short as the dome finally collapsed, revealing 4 of the 8 creatures done for. There was no way they were getting back up with those kinds of wounds. Again they were shocked when said creatures did just that. Naruto just scoffed. "You guys just don't know when to stop, huh? Fine, let's see how well you handle this, nah." The only response he got was the watery sounding roar screech of the creatures as they charged at him once more, trying to end his life. Using some of his Namikaze chakra, he performed the signature move of his ancestor, Yamato, Judgment Cut. All the others could see were purplish spheres appearing around the pack and then the beasts exploding due to the innumerable amount of slashes. To their and Naruto's own surprise, the creatures looked like they had been sneezed on and not just slashed a million times in the span of a second. They are immune to the ravages of time, which means any Jikiken technique is completely useless against them. Could have told me that earlier. But whatever, guess we're doing this my way then. Sliding his sword into the ground, he proceeded to go through a sequence of hand seals before calling out, "Kaiten. Hasenka no Jutsu, Fire Style." Phoenix Age Fire, launching volley of small fireballs towards the charging group of creatures. He quickly grabbed his sword and channeled his Futen chakra through it again, Futen. Judgment Cut. This time spheres of a greenish color appeared around the balls of fire, and due to the slashes being wind-natured, the fireballs grew much larger and flew with more intensity. They impacted with the creatures kicking up dust and flames. The blonde was far from done though. He flashed to the other side of where the beasts just were and going through another sequence of seals slammed his hands on the ground, Doten. Yomi Numa no Jutsu, Earth Release. Swamp of the Underworld, creating a swamp trapping the pack. Amazingly, they seemed to still be able to go, although looking even worse than before, with limbs missing and parts literally melting off at the bone. Quickly the Kyuubi container channeled Raiten chakra through his blade and slammed it into the chakra swamp, calling out, "Raiten. Jibashi, Lightning Release. Electromagnetic Murder." With the different minerals in the earth as well as the small amounts of water acting as conductors, Naruto was able to send mass amounts of the lightning nature through each and every one of the horrid-looking creatures. Due to how blinding the attack was, nobody knew if the creatures were being hurt by all this or not. Feeling that he had handled it well enough, Naruto stopped the flow of chakra and flicked the mud off his blade. Looking out over the destruction he had just caused, all that could be seen in the mud pit was some charred limbs and nothing else. With a sigh, Naruto relaxed his posture only to feel Ino hook her arms around his neck and Yakumo snuggle up to his front. "So it looks like your training went well," smirked his fellow blonde. "Ah yeah, you could say that. Big improvement with my Kenjutsu too," chuckled our protagonist. "Yeah, I could see that, kiddo. Your mom would definitely be proud of you and how you're using her blade," I smiled the team Scarecrow. Setting Ino down and slipping his arm out of Yakumo's grasp, much to their ire, he walked up to an injured Zabuza and blushing Haku. He smiled at Haku and held his hand out. She was deeply confused at what he was asking her for until she heard Zabuza laugh at her and point at what she currently held clutched to her chest. Realizing that he probably wanted his scabbard back, she handed it over to him, giggling embarrassedly. Naruto just chuckled, shaking his head at her, and sheathed his sword once again, loosely carrying it in his left hand. Kakashi walked up to his student and adoptive little brother and placed a strong hand on his shoulder. So wanna explain what those things were and how you exactly got that strong and fast? Yeah sure but it's a long story so let's move near the river and get comfortable cause it's a pretty long story. At that the group agreed. They needed the rest. It looked like Haku and Zabuza were going to leave until they were stopped by Naruto. And where do you think you guys are going? Haku was about to speak up but yet again she was interrupted, this time before she could even make a sound. Didn't I tell you two that you're coming to Konoha to join us? Zabuza gave a hearty laugh at that and just shook his head, you're something else you know that kid. Should have met my parents, retorted the smiling blonde. Ino here will patch you up once we get to a good spot alright. Zabuza just chuckled again and nodded. After taking a leisurely walk with Kakashi helping Zabuza walk in his injured state, the group finally reached their destination. Setting Zabuza down on a patch of grass, Ino got to work on fixing Zabuza as best she could, with Haku also looking at what she was doing. She only knew some very rudimentary skills when it came to Iryo Jutsu, so witnessing someone who actually knew more than her would be a great opportunity. The others took up spots on rocks or leaning against said rocks. Naruto took a spot on a good-sized boulder and crossed his feet into the lotus position. Everyone present gave him a pointed look and with a sigh Naruto shared with them what all had happened. His training with the help of his ancestor, the Kyuubi becoming more active with their conversations, as well as his training with its powers, etc. Learning about the Kyuubi had been shocking to Haku, but Zabuza knew all about how shinobi villages worked. He had lived long enough to see how most Jinchuriki were treated and it wasn't pleasant. Haku had no such experience and resolved to find out more about the blonde. Ino and Yakumo of course saw the looks Haku was giving their crush and all they could do was sigh and facepalm. Naruto was just too good of a guy sometimes. So what are we going to do about our two passengers here? We aren't due to return back to the village for another 2 weeks, so Kakashi asked. As far as he was concerned this decision fell to Naruto. He had made the call on all this so he would leave it up to him. He knew Naruto wasn't stupid and he trusted his decision. It had been Naruto who had gotten them to this point. Well I don't see any harm in letting them come with us on our little training trip. Not like we're giving out village secrets or anything. I let the Sandaime know our situation with our next correspondence in a few days. Kakashi just nodded at that and the girls grew irritated that they were now going to have an older girl who obviously had a crush on their blonde accompany them. This was going to be an interesting 2 weeks. What did you call me ice bitch? You know damn well what I said you blonde bimbo. I'll show you why what the hell are you doing Yakumo? The 3 males of the group just sighed for what seemed to be the millionth time that day alone. The first 2 days of traveling together had been rather uneventful, with Zabuza still recovering and Haku trying to get to know Naruto more. The more she learned about the blonde though the more she fell for him. He shared such a similar past as her it was kind of scary actually. Obviously they turned out quite different but still there were similarities. They viewed those that actually cared for them as precious and would do anything to protect those same people. It actually wasn't until the 3rd day that the girls had begun to bump heads. Haku had come to the decision that Naruto was perfect for her and coming from similar backgrounds meant that they would be perfect together. This of course didn't sit well with Yakumo much less Ino. They could hardly go a day without one setting the other off. Not much happened other than yelling and insults being thrown though. They knew that Naruto would not step in, but if they came to blows and actually tried to harm each other well he wouldn't have any of it and getting on his bad side was the last thing any of them wanted to do. Kakashi and Zabuza merely sat back and enjoyed the show. The two had bonded over their shared love of, you guessed it, icha. Naruto was seriously wondering if the damn thing could be used to bring about world peace or something. He had of course read one of the books, but the appeal had been lost on him. It actually wasn't as smut-filled as most were led to believe, but still he just couldn't see how so many people were such fervent fanatics. TCH. Pathetic. Rumbled the deep voice of Naruto's prisoner. Hey at least they're not stuck inside a teenager's body. At the lack of a comeback Naruto smirked in victory. Over the years he had come to enjoy the verbal battles with the huge fox. It was especially satisfying when trumped the fix. It boosted his confidence knowing he could win a battle of wits with a 1,000-year-old chakra beast. Why must you refer to me as if I am genderless or something? Wait you have a gender? Spoke a thoroughly shocked Naruto. That your blonde ass in here. And with that Naruto was gone from the conscious world. What the hell is all this about Kyuubi? I was in a tree I could have fallen. Naruto comically spat. His only response was the form of a strikingly beautiful red head walking towards the bars. Any further thought he had was cut short as his brain went blank. The woman was beauty given form. Her long blood-red hair flowed like a river of fresh blood that she let loose. It reached her mid-back and jagged bangs swept to the right, covered her forehead with some of said hair coming down to just above her eyelashes. Her eyes were coated with a small amount of purple eyeliner, further enhancing her crimson eyes. She had a slim figure with healthy curves in all the right places. A tight plump behind with what Naruto estimated to be at least D-cup breasts. Her form was clothed in a loose kimono of dark reds and royal purples that reached to her calves with a slit in the right leg going up to the beginning of her thigh. The sleeves were detailed with black flames with the sleeves themselves just stopping short of her knuckles, and the obi was a stretch of pure black that loosely tied around her waist. Her feet were left bare and both her toenails and fingernails were painted black. He had seen his fair share of good-looking females. Hell, he had some of the hottest in his age range vying for his attention, but this was a woman with womanly curves and cough assists. The woman had a tick mark form on her forehead as Naruto continued to ogle her. The only thing he was missing was the drool. "You really know better than your sensei or that old pervert." Even her voice was sexy with the right amount of raspy come hither and femininity. "Hey. I take offense to that. I just have a healthy appreciation for the female body," spoke the indignant Naruto. "Hopefully she buys that." "Hey Dumbus, I can hear thoughts, remember? So you're a girl. I hate you so much right now, I hope you know that." All Naruto could do was hang his head in shame. He prided himself on being rather intelligent and being open to the unexpected, but hey, can you blame him? He just found out that the almighty chakra beast living in his gut was female, a damn hot one at that. "You're being an idiot aside, why the hell would you just assume I was genderless?" spoke a now calm Biju. "Well, it's kind of hard to think otherwise. You didn't show any features of being either male or female, and you've even said yourself that you're almost entirely made up of chakra, so I kinda just assumed you were genderless," the blonde defended. He had his reasons, damn it. "You're made up almost entirely of chakra too, you Dumbus. Why do you think jutsu are even possible? Why depleting your chakra stores is life-threatening?" scolded the fox. "Chakra is called the essence of life for a reason. When you expend chakra you are essentially using your life energy," and as the fox continued to lecture him on the intricacies of chakra and the like, it all kind of blended into a blur. He was more intently focused on the scientific correlation of how the intensity at which she spoke was directly linked to the physics of "oh fuck it," he was staring at her tits. His reward for this was getting thumped upside his head by a rather irate kitsune's tail. Again he just lowered his head in shame knowing he deserved it. His chin was lifted by a well-manicured black fingernail, only to realize that A. Kyuubi had a couple inches on him height-wise, and B. said Demoness's face was currently inches from his own. He was far from being a prude, and you really couldn't be when you had two of the most attractive kunoichi of his generation hanging off of him at every opportunity they got. But again, they would grow into beautiful and sexy women in their own right, but here was a sexy and gorgeous woman inches from him. He was highly tempted to let his eyes wander lower on her form, but knew doing so would mean forfeiting his own life. "Now Naruto, I would normally beat you to within half an inch of your life for ogling me," the redhead hotly whispered in his ear, sending shivers down his spine out of both arousal and fear. What was that term Kakashi had told him about again? Oh right, a fear erection. Yea, he now fully understood that concept. "But you see, being as powerful as I am, there has never been a suitable mate worthy of my attention and affection," she continued. All our lucky bastard of a blonde could do was stand as rigidly as possible. "You my dear blonde," here she raked her nails along his scalp, combing through his golden locks, "have in the span of 6 years come to be as strong as your own father, who many claimed was one of the strongest to grace this world, the same man who, although with assistance, managed to defeat me." Naruto's only response was to stiffly nod his head. She made enough distance to be able to interlock both her arms behind the young blonde's neck, forcing him to stare into her hypnotizing red eyes. "The Sharingan has got nothing on these rubies. At the rate you are going, in maybe 4 years' time you may well be on my level." She paused here to draw Naruto flush against herself. He damn near went brain dead as all the blood left his upper body, heading down south instead. "You are among the more attractive of your species and will only become more so as you reach the peak of your body's prowess, and thanks to your blood will remain so for centuries to come. If she doesn't hurry up I may just pass out." How weird how I can become unconscious in my own mind. "What I'm saying is that you, my container, are the only being worthy of being my mate. And I think I am much better of a choice than those petty human girls." Grabbing his wrists she brought them to wrap around her waist, locking the two into a very intimate and romantic position. "Don't you think so, Naruto?" But the gulp, our blonde hero oddly thought he heard a voice in the back of his mind shout, "Fatality," before he lost consciousness. As his form faded from his mind, all the Kyuubi could do was shake her head. "I wasn't lying, my dear container. You are the only being who suits me and I will have you, mark my words." Naruto expected to find himself waking up in the real world, but instead he found himself waking up in the part of his mind occupied by his ancestor. It looked to be a dark Gothic church of some sort, and he found his ancestor as he usually was, sitting in one of the many pews in the church, staring straight at the painting that took up the entire back wall. The painting was of a figure wielding some sort of massive sword locked in what looked to be a fight to the death with a similar figure. The figure with the massive broadsword was covered in a cloak of pitch black, while the man opposite him wielded a huge scythe and was covered in a cloak of deep purple. Naruto had always wondered who and what the painting exactly depicted but didn't bother himself with it too much. If Yamato thought it important then he would have told him by now. The cloaked blonde walked to the row Yamato was in and took seat fairly close to him. Nothing was said for a while, and Naruto took this time to really examine his ancestor. The man carried himself with an air of authority and poise. He even dressed as such. At this moment Yamato was wearing what Naruto liked to call his casual clothing. It consisted of a black suit with a dark blue dress shirt, silver tie, and a blue rose in his breast pocket. Yamato himself was tall, towering over Naruto at solid 6'5", and solid but limber muscles meant more for speed than power. He looked to be in his early 30s with a regal look to his face that was complemented by his black slicked back hair and sharp ice blue eyes. After a few minutes of silence between the two, Yamato finally spoke. "Those creatures, they have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. They were there when I was alive and probably long before that as well." Naruto was of course shocked but did not show it on his face, merely giving his ancestor a glance out of the corner of his eyes. "I do not know their origins or even the extent of their powers, but I do know this: they are immune to time as a whole, seem to be at least somewhat intelligent, travel in packs, and they maintain the natural balance of things throughout time and space." He merely gained a curious glance from his blonde descendant, asking him to go on. Still looking straight at the painting he continued, "They obey the orders of their master and who I assume to be their creator, a being whose name or face I do not know. The only thing I do know about him is that he governs over time and space and hates any who share our blood. He hates us because we can interfere in the affairs of his kingdom and use powers he feels should only be his, correct?" Naruto said with a neutral tone, also looking straight ahead. He only got a slight nod as his confirmation. "Our clan did not fall because of a botched attempt to plane jump or time travel, did they?" he inquired. In a manner of speaking, yes and no. They did attempt to do so, but I believe that even these gods have to obey certain laws. My guess is that they may not directly interfere with the affairs of us on our plane unless their domain is directly threatened in some manner. The being used this opportunity to strike at our members." As he said this, there was a clear edge to Yamato's voice that was not there before. The man may seem cold and indifferent to all, but deep down he truly loved his family. "Do you think he knows about me? Or knew about my dad? Your father? No. Your father may have been able to do something not even I was capable of, but that technique of his uses the barest amount of Namikaze energy possible in the briefest of periods. You on the other hand? Possibly. I cannot say for sure, but I would be careful when using the higher ranking techniques. If he does not know of you yet, it would be very beneficial to keep it that way, at least until a time when he will no longer be able to pose a threat to you and those around you," cautioned the regal man. "Wait, hold on. You actually expect me to be able to fight a god at some point?" spoke a thoroughly shocked teen. Finally Yamato turned from looking at the picture to look at Naruto in the eyes. Ice cold blue met sapphire blue and held the other's gaze for a period of time. During this period of time nothing at all was said, not a muscle moved, yet with this one gaze much was said. Naruto finally tore his eyes away and resumed his calm posture. Likewise Yamato returned his gaze to the painting. "I see," came the quiet voice of Naruto. "Yes, and in time you will do," intoned the baritone of his ancestor. For some time silence reigned between the two before Naruto slowly started to fade. The two gave the smallest of glances to each other and once again Yamato was left to himself. "One day, young one, you will be powerful, so powerful that the heavens will be brought to their knees and the 9 hells will bow to you. All will know your name, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze." Naruto's group had begun to worry when Naruto suddenly fell out of the tree he had been perched in. They knew that a fall like that would never do much if any damage to him of all people, but still it was worrisome. Kakashi explained that he had probably been pulled into his mental plane by either the Kyuubi or his ancestor for something important, which of course was kind of true. As soon as Naruto woke up he was glumped by 3 very excited girls. Before a fight could break out he wrapped his arms around all 3 of them and allowed his chakra to flow around them, showing them what he could not say. Kakashi and Zabuza looked on in happiness, but they knew something the girls didn't. They had lived long enough to know what this kind of gesture meant. It was romantic, yes, but underneath that was a very somber tone. The only time they had seen this was when someone had accepted a fate that would tear them away from those they loved. Kakashi gained a steely glint in his eyes. "Naruto, your father and mother were the family I lost when I was young, and that makes you family. Whatever you have to face in the coming years you will not face alone. Those girls will not allow you to do so, and neither will I." Zabuza just grunted. "Kid, you've just made all of our lives a hell of a lot more interesting." Hefting his huge sword onto his shoulder he continued, "Wonder what kind of opponents I'll run into now. Gonna need to kick my training into high gear." The next day we find everyone in the group training individually as hard as they could. For being ninjas of the leaf they sure like to murder a lot of poor innocent trees. At the sound of a hawk screeching the group gathered to see a rather plain brown hawk with a leaf insignia on a leather strip at war around its torso landing on a tree stump. On its back was a leather scroll case, and in the case was a scroll bearing the mark of the Hokage. Naruto stretched his arm out, and the hawk made its way to his shoulder, where it opened the case with its beak and leaning forward, dumped the scroll inside into Naruto's waiting hand. As a reward Naruto gave it a berry, and with another screech, it flapped its wings and was flying back to Konoha. Naruto untied the scroll, and after reading it rolled it up and burned it with a minor Kaiten jutsu. "Pack it up guys, Sandame's got a mission for us. This will also be a test of Haku and Zabuza's ability as well as trustworthiness. As such Haku you're with me. Zabuza you're with Kakashi. Our memories of the mission will be used by the Hokage and the Ninja Council to evaluate you." Before he had even finished the group was packed and ready to head out. Zabuza had easily adjusted to groove of the group as being a part of the Seven Swordsmen, as well as Mist, Kiri's own Anbu, was much the same. Haku had a bit of a hard time, but having Zabuza as a sensei helped her adjust quickly. It also helped that the object of her affection was now heading her training. Within the 3 days alone her already astounding speed had been improved upon, and she had even shared with the girls how to perform one-handed seals if need be. "So where we headed out to Rito-kun?" asked the bossy blonde of the team. "And what are we doing specifically?" inquired the Hyoten user of the group. Naruto leapt off into the trees with the rest of the group only seconds behind him. "We're off to Nami no Kuni to take out that sleazeball Gato of Gato Industries, as well as to secure a trading deal with the village." And with that not a word more was spoken. It was mission time. They had already been close to the border between Hai no Kuni and Nami, so it had only taken them a day's travel at the pace they had set. As soon as they arrived they sent Yakumo and Ino into the village to see if they could find any info on Gato's whereabouts. In the meantime Naruto and Kakashi began to hash out a rough plan of attack, with Zabuza chipping in with any knowledge he had on the guy. Haku was content with using Naruto as a pillow to rest. She was not so used to traveling at such speeds for such long stretches. Sure her and Zabuza had to run quite often from the hunter inn, but they always went with the run fast and hide somewhere plan. Yakumo and Ino shunshed it into the clearing looking quite pleased with themselves. Once they saw Haku they had the strong urge to say something, but considering this was a mission and they were in enemy territory they couldn't so instead went with giving the girl the stink eye. Kakashi glanced up from the scroll they had been using to hash out their plan and spoke, "Report. I found that Gato has 2 different sets of mercs for hire that he uses. The larger group he has living at a compound not too far from here. He also keeps the slaves and such there as well." When Ino got to the part about slaves she clearly had to hide her anger. She knew what kind of world they lived in and how females like her were viewed, but that didn't make it okay and made her even angrier. Everyone present gave a nod at that and understood what had to be done. Yakumo continued with her piece. "Gato himself is holed up on a small island not too far from the mainland. The smaller set of mercs he uses for his bodyguards live there with him on that compound as well." Kakashi and Naruto talked for a bit more before finalizing their plans. "Here's how it's gonna go. Myself, along with Haku and Yakumo, will take Gato's personal compound first. Kakashi along with Zabuza and Ino will take the bigger compound here on the mainland. Specifics will be shared within your group, but I will say this. My group will hit the island compound first, and when we feel we are close to completing our part, I will send out the signal for you 3 to begin your part, got it?" Naruto received a chorus of "hi" from his team for the mission. "Also remember that if you find yourself in need of help, flare your chakra 2 times in quick succession. If you cannot do that use the seal I have given all of you to communicate to myself, alright?" He spoke once more receiving a chorus of "hi." "Remember that these are the scum of the earth. Leave none of them alive, understood?" This time he only got solemn nods and one bloodthirsty grin. They may not like it, but they could not let them live so that they could continue to cause harm to others. But that both groups vanished from the clearing, leaving no trace they had even been there in the first place. Night had draped its starry cloak over the world by the time the groups were set and ready to do what they had been trained to do since they were children. Tonight the moon's light seemed to be dimmer than it had ever been, as if the gods were giving the team the advantage. Naruto had donned his cloak, zipping it up and putting the hood on making him resemble his old sensei. The sheath of his okatana was put away in a storage seal he had on himself and the blade itself shined in the dim light. Yakumo had her paints at the ready just in case she had need of them, though she doubted that. She only needed the paints to amplify the power of her genjutsu when she was up against powerful nin, and these were just some hired grunts. Haku had donned the oinen, hunter nin, mask she had and was garbed in an all-black battle kimono with mesh covering any exposed part of her body. Remember, hit as many as you can as stealthy as possible. If you get caught and have to resort to jutsu then do so, but only if need be. The less chakra we waste here the better. Turning to Yakumo he continued, take care of as many guards as you can. Me and Haku will take Gato himself. He received only nod as his response. Yakumo had killed before of course, but it still bothered her deep down and she was taking the time to mentally prepare herself for the massacre she was going to commit. Finally a glimmer of the moon's light shone through the clearing, only to reveal nothing. "Hey Dan, you and the others up for a card?" Gaudier gurgled, and the merc breathed his last, victim to one of Haku's senbon puncturing his throat. His friend Dan had met his end thanks to Naruto's blade liberating his head from his shoulders. Naruto noticed Haku twitch as she killed and simply placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. As she calmed she gave him a nod, and with that they were off leaping through the shadows of the night heading for Geto. Ikumo was leisurely strolling through the compound like a ghost making not a single noise, and trailing behind her were corpses littering the floors. Any who noticed her were met with death before they could make a sound. Some were fortunate enough to not even notice her, thanks to her genjutsu, and died without even realizing it. Blood dripped from her hands, and her long brown hair fell in waves covering her face as she continued her walk of death. "Hey, you can't," was all the tattooed merc could get out before Yakumo slashed his throat open with her kunai, showering the floor in his blood and leaving yet another corpse for the creatures of the island. "Man, this midget pays some good money and all, but he is way too fucking paranoid. Shit kinda gets irritating," muttered a wannabe samurai to his buddy for the night. "Quiet out there," yelled the fat mouse that was Geto. None of them knew that their members in the lower levels were currently being massacred by a 12-year-old Genin. And none of them knew that only Geto and these two poor guards were the only ones left living on the upper flowers. If either the two guards would have checked just outside the door to the hallway they were in, they would seen the very walls and floors of the building stained in the life liquid of their comrades, heads lying nowhere near where their bodies were, and bodies nailed to the walls by senbon of ice. The samurai's buddy turned to give him a reply only to see the corpse of said man in the hands of an oinen who currently held senbon in between her knuckles that were holding the man up by his neck. He turned to open the door only to be bisected down the middle of his body by Naruto's blade. The cloaked teen flicked the blood off of his blade and with a nod to Haku, opened the massive doors to Geto's office. They found the man behind his desk doing some type of paperwork. They waited for the short man to notice them. He looked up and questioned, "Who the hell are you? I know for sure you're not on my peril." When he received no response he snorted, "I guess you're here to look for a job then. Talk to Hiro outside about it." When he still didn't receive a response he got up and yelled, "What the fuck do you two want?" Finally garnering some response the two turned towards the door and Geto smirked thinking he had gotten through to them, only to receive a view that almost made him vomit. His hallway and the room outside was littered with the corpses of his men. He was far too shocked to even say anything and merely stared wide-eyed at the massacre. Then he saw who he thought to be a ghost appear. Instead he saw it was only a young girl. He would have made a comeback if he didn't notice that her hands were dripping with blood. The brunette turned to the other two and muttered, "Lower floors are clean." Geto nearly shat himself at that. His whole compound dead. Geto grinned and began to chuckle to himself. The three returned their attention back to the poor excuse of a human being. At the snap of his fingers two missing nin shot from the rafters calling out Suiton. Suiton no jutsu. Water release. Water bullet. Naruto stepped forward slightly and slashed his sword horizontally calling out, "Futon. Tatapa no jutsu, wind release." Great breakthrough, sending out a wave of wind that overpowered the two Suiton jutsus with ease. Before the two rogue Kirinin could counter one received several water senbon through the neck the other a kunai through his skull. As he saw his men get murdered with such ease Geto tried to think of any escape route possible, but he could think of nothing. These three had slaughtered everyone in his compound without him noticing until it was too late. So he resorted to the only thing he could think of to save his pathetic life, begging. "What is it you want? Money? Land? Women? I'll give you anything you want, just let me live." The man groveled to the three, even going as far as to get on his knees. Naruto walked up to him and let a scroll fall to the ground. Any and all safe codes, bank numbers, and the location of anything else with value. Naruto spoke in a monotone. Scrambling the man began to write it all down, especially when he felt the cold steel of a blade at his throat. Yes, of course. When he finished he handed the scroll back to Naruto who gave it to Yakumo. "You and Haku go and gather as much as you can." With a nod they were gone. Geto looked up towards the man, "I can go right? You said you'd let me live." His only response was Naruto turning towards the man and muttering, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Kudos to anyone who knows where this is from," and with a flick of the wrist Geto's head was sent flying across the room. The three raided every single vault Geto had written down, and once they were done putting all the assorted jewels, scrolls, and money they could fit into sealing scrolls they met atop a hill at distance from the massive compound. With a single thought a cage bunshin, shadow clone, appeared to his right. Both went through a series of hand seals, and the real Naruto called out, "Kaiten. Goryuken no jutsu, fire release." Great dragon fire releasing a blaze in the shape of a dragon's head the size of a small house with his clone calling out, "Futon. Tatapa no jutsu." Not moments later the whole compound was set ablaze by the flames. The three watched as it burned for a minute before they vanished, heading for the bigger compound on the main island. The massive fire had been the signal for the other three to begin their own assault. Kakashi, Ino, and Zabuza saw the fire and felt the spike of chakra and prepared for their part of the mission. Ino, remember, you go and free any and all captives. Me and Zabuza will take care of the rest. And with that they leapt into the middle of the compound with the attention of all the mercs on them. Before the paid soldiers could even say something stupid, Kakashi and Zabuza had completed the seals for their techniques. Zabuza shouting, Suiton. Suryudan no Jutsu, water release. Water dragon bullet, summoning forth a massive dragon of water, and with a watery growl, it rushed towards a group of gathered mercenaries. Kakashi calling out his own elemental dragon with Raiden. Raryudan, lightning release. Lightning dragon bullet. Those hit by either of the two techniques were the lucky ones. Their deaths were quick and over with, their comrades would not be so lucky. But the nod to each other, both powerful nins were often flashes, Kakashi with his signature Rikiri in hand, and Zabuza wielding his massive Zanbatsu. Kakashi cut a path through merc after merc with his electrified hand. There would have been much more blood spray if it were not for the heat of the technique immediately cauterizing any and all wounds it caused. This of course was causing more damage and pain than anything else. Instead of bleeding out to death quickly, those who fell victim to the jutsu would live long enough to feel all the pain of their body slowly start shutting down, that is if they had enough of their bodies still connected to feel it. Zabuza was carving a much bloodier path through his part of the compound. With as big as his sword was, one sweep of it was taking out 3 men at a time. He grinned, showing off his sharp teeth as he felt the blood of his victims bathe him. He did not care that some of the men he hit were not completely dead, but were instead left to live out the last few minutes of their life looking on in horror as their separated limbs twitched with the last nerve impulses left in them like some sick real-life version of a zombie. Ino was much quieter about her approach, though just as gruesome. Any unlucky enough to cross her path were met with a slow agonizing death due to whatever poison happened to be on that particular kunai or senbon. Some felt acid burn its way through their very veins until nothing was left of them, others suffocated as their lungs shut down and stopped pumping air, and others felt all of their organs get shut down by the electric shocks coursing through their bodies. She felt no remorse for these men. To her they were the scum of the earth and deserved worse for the things they had subjected the people they captured to. She finally reached the massive tent that had housed said prisoners, and the guards who were there leering at her in lust received a senbon carrying a poison of her making. She called it Shiny no Seppan, or the kiss of death. All the blood in the victim's body would flow upwards, filling their heads until it literally poured out of every hole on their head. Guess where I stole this from? Hint. It's a kung fu movie that came out in the mid-2000s. She walked into the tent expecting to find people locked up in cages or something, only to find her cloaked crush breaking the last of the chains off the prisoners. At her questioning glance all he said was, Cage Bunshin. She just nodded. Leave it to Naruto to try and save everyone. Boss wants you to take them and meet up with Yakumo and Haku outside in the forest. Once you're all together, take them back to the village. Boss said that he, Zabuza, and Kakashi will take care of this place. Makes sense. Those three can unleash some pretty devastating jutsu without worrying about chakra exhaustion. Yakumo, Haku, and myself are meant for smaller scale missions. Those three can do that in battles on a bigger scale. With that in mind, she hushed the prisoners and led them out of the tent and made her way to the forest with a small group of prisoners following. The Naruto clone looked at the Redeed who had stayed with him in curiosity. In other circumstances he was sure she was a bombshell in the league of his tenant, but right now she was covered in mud, blood, and other such filth. Her hair was knotted and in disarray, and she looked to have been starved for quite some time. Luckily it looked like she had been able to stop them from doing to her what they had done to the other women. Before she could say anything to her cloaked savior, he poofed away only for the same figure to walk through the flaps of the tent. She bowed to him and said, "Thank you for saving me. Any longer and I would have been victim to a fate much worse than death. I owe you my life." He dismissed it with a wave of hand and instead asked, "Why stay here?" "I doubt it was to thank me. I am actually a Kunoichi and I want to exact some revenge on these scumbags. Normally I would be able to do so myself, but they have been drugging me for the past month and so I can only do some lower level jutsu," was her reply. Naruto nodded at that. He did not exactly condone needless revenge or grudges, but this was a different matter. They had been only a day or so from raping this poor woman and had already beaten and starved her. He could not blame her for wanting some revenge. He reached into his cloak and tossed her a pouch full of kunai. "Though I have no doubt of your claim at being powerful, at this moment you are not, and me and my comrades wish to wipe this place off the map, so please stay close to me, miss." "Alright. My name is Mei Terumi of Kiri." He gave her a nod and turned to leave with the Redeed following him. A random merc who thought he could take them on rushed the two only to receive a kunai to the skull. Naruto glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. The two continued on with Mei tossing kunai occasionally and Naruto dispatching others with sword swipes or quick jutsu use. They came upon the center of the compound to find Naruto's comrades and Mei was shocked to find out who they were. Sharingan no Kakashi and Zabuza Momoichi, who is this guy to have comrades as strong as them? Kakashi and Zabuza glanced at Naruto and immediately jumped to his sides. So who's the redeed? Grunted the crazed Kiranin. My name is Mei Terumi, Zabuza. Spoke the indignant redeed. Woe of the Terumi clan, damn Gaki, you sure have a knack for picking up some powerful allies, huh? Chuckled the blood-soaked man. Yeah, you could say that. You guys done? He saw their nods and continued, alright, let's finish this then. Naruto grabbed Mei bridal style and the three vanished to a hilltop not too far off. Naruto went through a chain of seals building a massive amount of chakra before calling out, Rantan. Jikito no Susanoo. Storm release. Wrath of the Storm God, roughly, sending out gale force winds from his right palm, while the other fired what looked to be actual thunderbolts. With as much chakra as he had put into the technique, the winds crushed and flattened everything in the compound, and anything that was left was burned to a crisp by the bolts of lightning. In the end, nothing but a charred clearing the size of a small town was left. All Mei could do was gape at the amount of destruction this one man had caused with one technique. What was more was he didn't even look winded by it. The four turned when they heard a whistle to see Ino, Yakumo, and Haku staring at the destruction as well. The group as one turned to stare at what was once a place of vile and disgusting people doing even worse things. Not wanting to linger much longer, Naruto once more picked up the Terumi and they were gone, leaving the rest to nature to fix. The group returned to the village to be met by a thunderous roar of applause and cheering. It seemed that the captives had informed the rest of the village of what these people had done for them. Naruto and his friend smiled as this was the reason they did what they did. A little girl ran up to Naruto's leg. He smiled as he looked down at the girl who could be no older than 4 years old. She put out her arms to say that she wanted to be picked up. The parents of the girls ran up to him attempting to apologize for the girl's behavior, only to gasp as he picked her up only for the girl to yank on his hood, pulling it off. They expected to be greeted by the face of a scarred man well into his years, and even Mei was expecting this, but instead the hood had hidden the face of golden-haired teen with regal features and the brightest blue eyes anyone had ever seen. Naruto almost instantly gained a fan base at this exact moment. Instead of getting mad, he merely chuckled and placed the girl on his shoulders, much to the little girl's delight. Thoughts of how good a father he was going to be echoed through the heads of almost every girl there, and Mei found herself debating on seducing this boy, no man in front of her. Powerful beyond his years, cunning, handsome, and great with kids. I may have just found my future husband. Looking at herself though, she sweat dropped, should probably get cleaned up before I try and seduce him though. An old man wearing a hard hat and with a noticeable beer gut walked up to the group and bowed to them. I speak not only for my family, but for all the people of this village when I thank you for rescuing our fellow civilians. Naruto walked up to him with the girl still on his shoulders and reaching into his coat, pulled out a sealing scroll. He laid it on the ground and pushing a small amount of chakra into it, called out a stack of files, as well as several large sacks. The sacks are filled to the brim with jewels, gems, and other assorted valuables. The files are several deeds of land, as well as business ownership titles that we liberated from Gedo. I return them to you and the village. Tears filled the eyes of everyone present. Team 7+2 was met with yet another round thunderous applause and screams of joy. With teary eyes, the man looked up to the teen and said, how can we ever repay you? We've taken a cut of the valuables as payment for the mission. The only other thing you can do is once you are back on your feet to seek out a trade agreement with Konoha. Spoke the lazy one-eyed Jounin. Turning to the silver-haired man, the old drunk frantically nodded, of course. It's the least we can do. Then we'll be off now. Gotta get back to our village after all. Naruto calmly spoke. As they began to leave, Mei latched onto Naruto's back where he almost passed out from a nosebleed when he felt her rather large assets pushing against his back. The girl's face palmed and Kakashi and Zabuza laughed at this turn of events. Hey, what the hell, you like her but not mine are just as big as hers. Shouted the Kyuubi, sending him the mental image of her pressing her breasts up with her arms and pouting. Now is not the time for that, damn it. Chapter 11. After having made it a little more than halfway to Konoha, the group decided to finally rest. It had been a long day and they had been working since the night before without rest. It helped to get their minds off of what they had done, but at some point their bodies needed rest. Finding a clearing near one of the many waterfalls that were scattered in high no Kuni's forests, the group decided it was the perfect place to do so. The girls, Mei included, went off to the waterfall to wash the grime and filth off of them, while the guys would set up camp. Naruto was of course getting highly irritated as every time Zabuza or Kakashi would look at him, they would burst into a laughing fit. It had been fine the first 2 times, but after the 50th time it was grating on his last nerve. Right as he turned around to threaten the two with his blade, his jaw dropped because the girls chose that same moment to return from their pseudo-bath. He had of course seen Ino and Yakumo close to nude various times, and although he wasn't necessarily desensitized to it, it didn't affect him as much. Haku had a few years on the two, but was much more modest in the clothing department, so she wasn't the reason for his reaction. No, his reaction was because of Mei. He had been right when he assumed she was beautiful when cleaned, but he had been in battle mode at that point, so that little tidbit had been forgotten in all the haste and bloodshed. Now however he could truly appreciate the view that was Mei Terumi. Her long flowing red hair now free of knots and such shined in the setting sun. It reached well past her pert bottom and covered one of her aqua-green eyes, giving her a very enticing come-hither look. The woman wore no makeup, leaving her flawless porcelain skin on display, and he could only see makeup marring such a face. The other eye-catching detail was what she was wearing or lack thereof. She wore what little rags were left of her clothes, showing off her full curves in just such a way that left just enough to the imagination to make people want more. She couldn't really be blamed as she had been a prisoner only a few hours ago, so there was not much she could do about that. The woman sauntered up to Naruto, making sure his eyes were on only her. Kakashi and Zabuza meanwhile were off to the side, dying of laughter at the expense of Naruto's pride. The girls could do nothing more than seethe in jealousy, as they knew the woman was strong, probably on Kakashi's level. Inside of Naruto, another redeed vying for his affections was muttering assorted curses and devising ways to get rid of the water slut. As Mei finally reached Naruto, she slid her hands over the blonde shoulders and with as sexy a voice she could muster, which was damn sexy mind you, she said, "See something you like?" And at that the Jinchuriki had to use every single ounce of willpower to keep his mouth shut and stop himself from looking like an idiot. Instead Naruto just gulped and nodded his head slightly. "I'm glad that my very handsome savior likes what he sees." Trailing a delicate finger across Naruto's jawline she continued, "I still have yet to repay you for that, don't I?" Finally gathering what was left of his dignity at this point, Naruto managed to mutter out, "It was no problem. Just what I do. Well, regardless of that, I still owe you quite literally my life. So my dear savior, what is it you want? I'll give you," and here she leaned her head to literally breathe the next word into his ear, "anything." A stray thought in the back of his mind wondered if he should help Zabuza and Kakashi as they looked damn close to dying from lack of oxygen. Before he could make even more of a fool of himself, the younger girls had had enough of the red-headed slut hitting on my man and dove into action at this. I mean, Haku threw senbon aimed at certain nerve clusters that would render the redhead unconscious. Naruto, being Naruto, attempted to save Mei by moving her out of the way. The consequence of these actions left the girls even more jealous, the one-eyed wonder and his eyebrowless partner unconscious from a nosebleed, and our lucky bastard of a protagonist with a set of very pert, soft, and bare D-cups pressed to his cloak chest. His last thought before he embraced the darkness that was unconsciousness was, these girls are either gonna make me the happiest man on earth or send me to an early grave. Don't know which I prefer. Naruto woke to find himself with his head laying in the lap of the one responsible for his little nap. Before he could return to that nap once more, he gathered as much willpower as he had left, took off his cloak, and offered it to the Kiri beauty. She pouted at him and said, "What, you don't like what you see?" Pushing her large assets together further accentuation them if that was even possible. "Trust me, Mei-sen, I really like what I see, but I don't think entering Konoha with you like that will be the easiest of affairs, so if you would," was his blunt reply. She inwardly smirked at his comment, and so it begins. Faking a sigh she continued, "Fine. But only if you don't call me Mei-san. Call me Mei-chan." Naruto conceded and she took his offered cloak. As she zipped the cloak to cover herself up, Naruto sweat dropped, thinking, glad sensei put seals on it so it could expand if need be, otherwise I'd never be able to wear it again. "You know, Naruto-kun, I may just keep this cloak of yours." Hugging herself she squealed, "It's just so comfy and warm." Crying in I'm tears, Naruto thought that cloak was a gift from sensei too. It made me look so badass. Childish thoughts aside, Naruto's eyes instantly grew serious. Now I know Gato and his men have done some despicable things, but capturing Kunoichi. As far as I know, he was never that stupid, and Kiri is quite the travel from Nami. So how did you end up in his filthy hands? Mei's shoulders sagged and her face dropped all pretense of emotion. The rest of Naruto's group were at his side as well, all joking gone. I'm sure you all know of the less than great state Kiri is in right now. At that Zabuza scoffed and Haku turned her head away. Noticing their responses she sighed again before continuing, well, I'm actually on a mission. As soon as that was out of her mouth, Zabuza's Zanbatu was around her neck, waiting for her to give him a reason to show why it was called the Kubikurabacho, decapitating carving knife. No one moved a muscle to help her. Minutes passed in tense silence before in a commanding voice Naruto called, "Zabuza, remove the blade." Zabuza was going to question him when he saw the look in the teen's eyes. "TCH, better not be a mistake, Gaki," was all he said before lifting the blade from her throat. Mei sighed in relief before she noticed that only herself, Haku, and Zabuza seemed to be questioning his decision. In his position she would have let Zabuza do what he was known for. The blonde container looked at her and said, "People in my family have been known to show some empath powers. Due to certain circumstances beyond my control that sense was amplified and I can now tell exactly how people around me feel. Her eyes widened at this. He was a friggin' human lie detector. He knew to trust her cause he could damn near read her mind. Zabuza just chuckled, "Gaki, is there no end to your surprises?" Chuckling himself Naruto replied, "Like I said, remember who my parents are." "Hey yeah, who are your parents?" "I mean to have a kid like you they got to have been really powerful themselves and the only blondes to come from Konoha are Yamanakas and unless Blondie over there is into incest that no way." Mei's jaw dropped as she realized who his dad was. "Haha yup, dear old daddy was the Yondaime Hokage," Naruto smirked. "This guy is perfect. No wonder he's as strong as he is. He's probably had people like Kakashi and the Sandaime Hokage himself training him since he could walk. And if I'm right he's the Kyuubi's container as well." "Who was his mother though?" "Kushina Uzumaki." At Mei's confused look Naruto elaborated, "My mother. My mother was Kushina Uzumaki." Mei's jaw met the floor once again. Holy shit, the last of the Uzumaki was his mother. Jackpot. "Now that you don't need to be worried about being decapitated, would you continue with your story?" Kakashi drawled out. "Huh? Oh right. Well, I was on a mission but not for the Mizuki. I'm actually the leader of the rebel faction in Kiri and I went on a diplomatic mission hoping that Konoha would aid us in our cause." Mei said looking down. "I was turned away because the Sandaime did not want to involve his village." She looked up when she heard Naruto scoff. She got angry at him thinking he scoffed at her for being dumb, but what he said next shocked her, not surprised. Up until about a month ago the man sitting behind that chair was just the shell of a once feared cage. He received varying reactions at this. Kakashi grimaced and looked away, Ino and Yakumo shook their heads, and Mei was shocked that such a powerful nin would talk bad about his own cage. He went on to say, "It's a long story better saved for when we're in Konoha, but I will say this, if you were to come with us and ask him now he would definitely say yes. Like I told these two, I got some major pull with the old monkey." Mei's eyes widened as this one man had saved her from a fate worse than death and was now going to help her save her village, all in the span of a few hours. She put her head down, letting her hair cover her face. Before anyone could question her she leapt straight at Naruto and began crying into his chest. Naruto's face just dropped and he wrapped his arms around her, just letting her release all the pent-up emotion she had. Haku felt sympathy for the woman knowing what it was like to live in Kiri and have a Kekai Genkai. Add on to that the stress of having to maintain a certain image as head of the rebels and almost falling victim to a horrid fate, and no one there could blame the Redeed for her reaction. She was only human and could only take so much, and now here was someone who was essentially relieving her of a good chunk of that stress, and not out of greed or lust, but because he felt it the right thing to do. "Damn, it feels like we've been gone for a year or something nah?" questioned the blonde Uzumaki as he and his group gazed at the massive gates of Konohagakure no Sado after having been gone for a little over a month. Ino and Yakumo smiled, excited to be home once more and be able to see their families again. Haku and Zabuza smiled as this was going to be their new home, a safe place where they wouldn't have to watch their backs 24/7. Kakashi continued to read his little book, but you could see a grin on his masked face at finally being home too. Naruto. He had missed one thing, only his ramen. But that in mind he led his merry band of misfits with smiles on their faces to the gates of the place they called home. "Hey, isn't that? Haha yup, I'd recognize that blonde hair anywhere," spoke a chuckling Izumo. With smiles on their faces Izumo and Katetsu greeted Team 7, only to grow shocked at Naruto, with two more very attractive ladies hanging off of him. At that they just chuckled and shook their heads, only Naruto would leave to train and come back with two hotties. However, they grew nervous as they laid eyes upon the massive imposing figure that was a grinning Zabuza Momoichi. Shaking in their sandals they looked to Kakashi for answers. Still reading his little orange book the pervert lazily said, "He's with us. Gonna be joining Konoha as a nin, all thanks to our favorite blondie over there." The two eternal gate guards just shakily nodded their heads and let the group through the gates. As soon as Naruto saw the inside of the village he attempted to speed off to his own personal slice of heaven, only to have Kakashi grab him by his collar. Now Naruto, you gotta talk to the Hokage about these three like you said you were, and you don't go back on your word, do you?" The blonde just childishly pouted and huffed at having his nindo used against him in such a way. With that Naruto and Kakashi sunshined the group to the Hokage's reception area. The receptionist looked up at the sound of a shunshin being performed only to facepalm at the nervously grinning Uzumaki and his massive group and with the other hand pointed towards the Hokage's doors, giving permission to go in. As Naruto opened the doors to the Sandaime's office he was greeted by said man smiling, which he only returned with a bow. The Sandaime's smile noticeably dropped, but he still smiled as the rest of Team 7 filed in. Said smile turned into a very confused look as they were followed by an A-rank missing nin, who he assumed was said nin's apprentice, and a very busty Redeed he swore he recognized from somewhere. "I'm glad that you're back Team 7, but may I ask why the Kurigakure no Kijin, demon of the hidden mist, is in my office?" asked a very casual Hokage. He knew he was old and that Zabuza was powerful in his own right, but this was his home turf and even at his age, he was confident enough to be able to smack Zabuza and even his apprentice around. Kakashi lazily pointed a thumb at Naruto. Hiruzen just ran his hands down his face. Of course Naruto had something to do with this. If I didn't know better I'd think he was slowly trying to kill me by raising my blood pressure. Genin Naru, whoa hold on. Spoke a very shocked Mei, her face mirrored by Haku and Zabuza. Pointing a finger at Naruto she continued, he's a Genin. Ino and Yakumo popped up with grins on their faces, actually we're all Genin. Graduated almost 2 months ago. Silence reigned in the office for close to a minute before Zabuza began chuckling which then evolved to him rolling on the floor holding his sides. Team 7 and the Hokage thought that he had lost whatever tiny shred of his sanity he still had. Finally getting his breathing under control and wiping a tear from his eyes, he slammed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, Gaki what the fuck. And he continued his laughing. Mei then pointed an accusing finger at Hiruzen she began, what the hell old man. If that's how strong your genin are my cause would only need like 4 jounin and we could wrap up the civil war in no time. Hiruzen released a small amount of his chakra showing them he meant business. Now if you would have asked you would know that this team is not average, far from it. Naruto here has been training since he was 8. The AI kinda figured being who his parents were and all. I mean you probably had a hand in his training right? Mei's only response was the Hokage lowering his head in shame and Kakashi turning away. Naruto chose to speak up at this moment, no they did not. Only 2 people are responsible for my current strength and they are my old sensei Vincent and myself. Mei was shocked at this revelation. He got this strong pretty much on his own. Unbelievable wait what about those 2? She said pointing at the girls of Team 7. In return they pointed at Naruto. Ino spoke, if it wasn't for him I'd still be some stupid and pathetic fangirl focused more on her looks and dieting than being an actual kunoichi. Ikumo stepped forward covering her mouth with her long sleeves as usual and said, if I hadn't met him I wouldn't be here. My mind would have been locked away inside my body, leaving a demon to take over and try and destroy Konoha. He trained himself to be damn near cage level and then saved these girls and trained them to be stronger than most B-rank ninja so gotta have him now. Dirty thoughts aside Mei bowed to Hiruzen and then Naruto, my apologies for jumping to conclusions. With both Naruto and Sarutobi waving her off, not in the least bothered by it, though she had brought up a sore spot in the Hokage. As I was saying, Genin Naruto why did you bring an A-rank missing nin, his apprentice, and a wanted woman into my office? Hokage-sama I think that adding a former member of the Kurigakure no Shinobigatana Shichinen Shu would be a great boon to our forces, as well as offering a wealth of knowledge of some more underground things. Adding his apprentice who herself is at least low jounin in strength and possesses the Yuki clan's Hyoten Kekai Genkai to our numbers at the same time would just give us even more strength. Sarutobi stroked his beard as he thought about it all. It was a win-win as far as the village was concerned and with a well-known jounin and one of the village's royal clan's names backing the 2, their integration would be almost seamless. The young Yuki heiress would pose no problems as she never affiliated herself with a village to begin with. Zabuza on the other hand would be an issue. Although the villages had no laws on taking another village's missing nin, due to how hard it was to reach even the smallest of agreements in the first place, it was still a touchy matter. However with Kiri too absorbed in their current civil war, there would be almost zero backlash to deal with. With that in mind he began looking through his desk for 2 files. Finding them he offered one to Haku, this document here states that you are willingly becoming a citizen of Konoha and that you will abide by any and all of its laws. As for your joining the ninja corps, we will deal with that in 3 days' time, so be prepared for that. All you have to do is sign your name here. And with a smile on her porcelain face she did just that. Afterwards the Hokage stamped it with his seal and set aside for later filing. Turning to Zabuza he placed another paper on the desk, your situation is a bit more complicated. There are no laws against you joining us, but there will still be some weariness. As such you must sign this paper submitting yourself to 2 mental evaluations, a physical, as well as being followed by a team of Anbu for a month. At the end of the month your probationary period will be up and if you have met our standards, then you will be tested to see where you stand in our village's ranks. Zabuza looked to the smiling face of his adoptive daughter and the Gaki responsible for his current situation. Shrugging he said, I got nothing to lose and a lot to gain so fuck it, and with that sentiment he signed the paper. Folding his hands together he turned to Mei, now to deal with your situation. You have come here before asking for assistance and I turned you down and yet here you are again. What makes you think I will have changed my mind? At that Mei lowered her head in depression, thinking it was all for naught. However she looked up as she felt a hand placed on her shoulder. Turning she found a pair of shining blue eyes filled with confidence and determination. Looking at the cage Naruto asked, if I may plead a case for her? Waving his hand Hiruzen said, you may. Stepping forward Naruto intoned, I believe that you were, pardon my use of words Hokage-sama, mistaken when you turned her down. which he received even more looks of shock from the room's occupants. "Gaki's got a big brass pair to say that. I mean I planned a coup, but damn to say it to his face. Konoha is known for the astounding amount of emphasis we put on the concept of teamwork, and for good reason. Some of our strongest ninja to this day were the Sannin, powerful on their own, but working as a team they were feared across the nations, even earning the respect of Hanzo the Salamander. What I am getting at is that if you turn down having another of the 5 great villages as an ally, you will be spitting on the very thing we stand for." Chuckling, Sarutobi shook his head. "My boy, you would make a great politician." Turning to a hopeful Mei, he continued, "I will allot you as much as my village can offer in the department of resources as well as manpower," and here Mei's face burst into a huge grin and she smothered Naruto into her cleavage, suffocating the lucky bastard. "However, you must submit to 2 requests." And with that Mei dropped a gasping Naruto to the floor. "Anything in my power, Hokage-sama," she said while bowing. "You must come and talk a treaty with me when you have stabilized your village, and you must take a certain ninja." Confused faces broke out in the room while Naruto was slowly trying to sneak out, having a feeling he knew who the Sandaime was talking about. "You must take Naruto as an overseer and ambassador of sorts." The room's occupants as one turned to catch Naruto right as he put his foot on the railing of the Hokage's balcony. "Fuck," was his last word as he leapt out into the village. The Hokage, Kakashi, and Zabuza laughed as he was pursued by a bickering group of rather powerful kunoichi, while his tenant encouraged him to run away from the sluts who don't deserve to touch my mate. Turning to the portrait of Minato and his wife, Hiruzen smiled. "You'd be proud of the man your boy has become." "I know I am. Someday his legend may just overshadow even your own Minato, but that's how it works, right? The younger generation is always meant to surpass the past generation." Amakinda. Looking up into the heavens, we find a certain blonde and his beautiful wife looking down on their son. "My baby is gonna give me so many grandkids," cried the hysterical Reteed. "Make your old man proud and show him what the Namikaze men are capable of," shouted the grinning Yondaime. "Hey Kushi-chan, do you think Tsume still remembers that contract we set up?" As her husband said that, she once again burst into hysterics. "Make Ka-chan proud. What if Naruto has limitless chakra and summon multiple beasts?" Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.